Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this special meeting of the Council for Central Elgin on Monday, April 5th. It's 10 a.m. and I would ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. My spouse works for the municipality, and so having spoken with the Integrity Commissioner, he's confirmed to me that with the question divided so that the general governance wages are separate from the rest of the budget, I can proceed with the rest of the budget. So having done that question last meeting, we should be good to go.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. 2023 budget. Now, if I could ask municipal staff to start the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. First of all, let me say I'm privileged to be here with you this morning. It's our first time together. I certainly consider myself as a guest, and I look forward to working with you. I hope that my stay is actually as short as possible, that you're able to move on and get a recruitment under process and get your CAO filled. But I'm thankful for the welcome I've had so far from council and from staff. And I actually have been feeling pretty comfortable this is day 5. So I've been feeling pretty comfortable. It's been a little over a year since I retired. And but it's easy to pick up the pieces and roll again. So I feel comfortable. What I think, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, that I will provide some overview comments. I've had an opportunity to take a look at the document. I am not the expert on the line items or the program areas. You have experts and directors who worked hard to put those things together, but I thought I could provide a little bit of context at the front end from where I'm, as I look at it. And and we can take it from there. And you'll have to forgive me if some of my comments seem pretty basic and generic, but I just thought, for my sake, just to make sure that I've covered a few basic things that we can start at a pretty low level in my mind and move forward from there, if that's okay.
Thank you. It is, and I'd like to also, on behalf of council, welcome Mr. Graves. I know your background, Aylmer Conservation Area, City of St. Thomas. We appreciate your input and your help with us and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. So in terms of budget processes, it is a significant process in the annual life of municipal council in terms of coming together and defining your financial goals and aspirations for the year. What I would encourage you to think about, I'm going to talk about 2024 first. What I would encourage you to think about is that as you go through the next number of months leading up to the fall, and that's when you'll be in your next budget cycle again in terms of development of the budget, that staff will come to you with lots of different programs and potential projects, etc. That even as we conclude this budget and move to the next one, there'll be lots of staff reports that come and lots of projects that are on the horizon that you're just going to want to bookmark that may be part of the budget for 2024. So that when you get to, having a document in front of you next year, you've already covered the major principles of things that need to be discussed, and you're not sort of caught flat-footed about different projects, etc., that might be coming up. And there shouldn't be any new surprises unless something comes out of the woodwork. If you and I know staff will bring that information to you. I also appreciate the fact that you are all sitting here and this is your first budget document. So how could it not be any other way? But you will, I think, glean that over the number of months, there'll be reports, and some of those reports might say, we'll refer this information to the 2024 budget. And then you'll have a whole suite of things to start with. And, you won't have to spend a lot of time on particularly on individual projects, potentially. The budget document, as I have had a look at it, is very, very similar to any budget document, municipal budget document that I have worked with in the past. There was no sort of surprises in terms of the structure and the setup of it, et cetera. It's in my mind, really fulsome. I think staff done a great job of putting the actual document together in terms of what a municipal budget document looks like. I think the trick is, and I know when I was new in the business, is how do you read the thing and how do you glean the information out of it and how do you ask the right questions to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. But I think it's structured pretty well. And I'm also accustomed to the process where a budget is just a policy document. It's not like every dollar is absolutely locked in concrete. Things can fluctuate over the course of a time of year, and it might need adjustments from one line item to another. And if there's major fluctuations, I'm sure staff will come back to you and talk to you about those major fluctuations. But for the most part, it's not meant to be, okay, we say we were going to spend $5 on this and you're not spending a penny more. There has to be a little bit of leeway to make the system work. And but if there's big deviances, then staff will talk to you about that. So I think I mentioned that I'm accustomed to, when we develop a budget, that we look at we take a look at budget year over budget year, because typically we don't have the luxury of having the actual year-end numbers to look at because the audits are still going on, et cetera. So we compare, what was approved by council the previous year and move that ahead to, what does the budget look like? I understand there's some work going on as we speak to look at some of those actual year-end numbers. But I would think in other years, when you are very comfortable, when you're more comfortable with the new document, that you'll be more accustomed to seeing the year-over-year budget numbers instead of, because if you wait for your audit every year, you're going to really have a challenge in terms of getting projects out for tendering, et cetera, because typically an audit is quite a bit further in the year. And I know from my experience, municipalities compete against each other, see how quickly they can get their tenders on the street, so that they can get the best prices possible. That's all a function of budget. But I fully get it that it's a new council, and that happens every time there's a flip in a council or some changes. It takes some time to get comfortable with the budget. So that being said, I have put together just 3 or 4 slides that I would like us to have a look at. And as I said, some of these are pretty basic, but I think it'll just help us frame some of the discussion for this morning. So I'll ask to go to the first slide about who's sending the bill. And I'm sure none of this is going to be any news to you, but when we think about the ratepayers who are getting invoices from the municipality, I've kind of broken this into two different areas as it relates to Central Elgin, because we have suburban areas, we have villages, we have hamlets, and I've classified these as those areas that have services. And what I mean by services is those areas that have water and sewer bills as well. So they would annually get a municipal tax bill, and included in that tax bill is the municipal portion of taxes, and that's what the task is before us. Over the next while, is to develop what that municipal tax portion is. Also included in that is the county portion. I understand the county has landed on their budget recently, but this municipal council has no control over that. That's just a number that the county provides, and there's an equation in terms of how much of the county budget taxes that need to be raised are that the residents of Central Elgin are responsible for. Then, of course, there's the school board, both public and separate. And again, those budgets come from jurisdictions that this council doesn't have any really input into, but they happen annually as well. So that's sort of the municipal tax portion. Then Of course, residents with services, they get a utility bill. And in Central Elgin, that may come from Earth, your local utility company, or it may be from Hydro One. And I guess to some degree, although not council directly, but you would have a representative on the utility company. So there'd be some influence there in terms of the rate setting and what those budgets look like that come from Earth, but that's not really a direct responsibility of council, other than you have a rep there. You have then as well your water and your sewer bills that your residents get that are established through the water rates and the sewer rates. And I just want to say that in the context of establishing and the work that we need to do for the 2023 budget, while I understand and that there needs to be lots of discussion about the water rates in particular and the sewer rates, as with all municipal budgets, really, there's no impact on the tax rate relative to the water rates and the sewer rates. Those are separate financial events. And I'm sure you probably know that. So if you look in the budget document, you'll see at the end, you know, taxes required, it says 0 and 0 for water and sewer, because they don't have any impact on the tax rate. So I think that, you know, you're going to want to have discussion, lots of discussion about the water and the sewer rates. I might suggest that those are different discussions in trying to set your budget, because they don't have any impact on the tax rate itself. And I think that's kind of key to know. Then on the rural side, of course, when there's no services, of course, on the municipal tax bill, they still are responsible for the municipal portion, the county and the school board. They may get their utility bill from Hydro One. Now, what I didn't mention on both sides as well is your solid waste management, your collection for your garbage at the curb. And as I understand, again, that's a bit of a separate discussion. Those are user fee based that aren't impacted by the tax document itself per se. But that is a rate that is established and a policy that is established by council. So those, as we all know, when we think about the tax bill, it's not just about the taxes, it's about all those other add-ons that individuals are required to pay on top of that tax notice they get. So I just thought, as a sort of a real high level overview, maybe before we move on to my next slide, I wonder if there's any comment or query about any of those principles or anything anybody has any questions about. I don't want to leave anything sort of unturned.
Any questions from council? Thank you. Okay,
if I can have the next slide. So when I look at the proposed 2023 budget, I see that the total program is approximately 40, we might as well say $43 million in round numbers, 42,900,000 plus. And that's really comprised of two parts. There's two parts to a budgeting process. There's the operating budget and there's the capital budget. And the operating budget is, I'll characterize it simplistically, as all those day-to-day things that take place in the municipality on an ongoing basis that require financial support that keeps the business operating. As opposed to the capital budget, well, let me just back up a sec to say that typically the operating budgets, year over year, the line items don't change too much. The values might change a bit, but the line items stay relatively static year over year within document, unless there's a new program added or something. But those line items stay the same. That's different than the capital budget in that those are your major ticket items, your major expenditures into very specific areas. And again, over time, staff will bring you information about the building of a capital budget and the types of projects that should be included in that capital budget. And a big part of sort of the background behind a capital budget is what we call asset management. And our asset management plans, and I know that your staff are working and have worked a lot on asset management plans, et cetera. And That's really an inventory of all the hard resources that the municipality owns, from roads to buildings, etc. And those are very detailed studies. And against those studies are life cycle analysis. So, for example, I'm just going to say the roof at the Belmont Arena, for example, would have a certain life cycle on it. And so it's a planning tool that says, okay, year 7 of year 20, that roof needs to be replaced on the arena at the Belmont Arena. That's just one small example. When you get into the capital budget, you're going to have your buildings, you're going to have your roads, you're going to have your underground infrastructure, all of those things, all of those different numerical numbers are going to come together, and staff are going to say, we need to have X dollars at a minimum to fund across our total assets to make sure that we've got funds available to keep those things adequately maintained, et cetera. So asset management is a big part of building a capital budget, and all the background work and the documents that are developed for that and updated. The other thing about the capital budget that you will have noted from your documents is that the capital projects are funded from various streams, and they can be funded from dedicated reserve accounts where funds have been set aside for specific purposes. Projects can be funded from development charges, from new development that takes place in the municipality. I don't know, for example, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but if someone's building a brand new home and they're assessed a development charge, I'm just going to use a round number of $10,000. There's a document that says how that $10,000 is divided up, and so much would go to parks and other program areas, and those will go into reserve funds. And then when you have a parks project, then you can fund part of that project, if it's identified in your development charges document, out of that reserve fund. But those are sort of dedicated funds, and you can't take sort of a parks reserve dollars and spend it someplace else, because it's all set up in the development charges how those dollars are supposed to be spent. But you'll have noted in your current budget document that there are areas where there's funds being taken out of development charges to help offset costs for particular certain capital projects. Okay. And then some of the capital projects are also funded by grant dollars. That's a wonderful thing when we can attract grant funds from senior levels of government to help with projects. And typically those grants can't be moved around, and many of them are time sensitive, so that, if the government says they're going to give you the funds, you enter into an agreement with the government and that says you're going to have completed the project in X timelines, and there's accounting that has to take place and reporting back to the government to make sure that they're on track and on stream. So it's really great when you have upper levels of government funding that's available to help offset your capital programs. And then finally, simply some projects simply have to be funded through your taxes, through your tax base. And some are standalone. It's just pure tax dollars that pay it. Others, it's a combination of reserves, of development charges, or grants. And you can see that in your chart in terms of how that comes together to get to those funds. So the proposed taxes to support the 2023 budget as we sit here today, and the numbers that I think I have correct, are around 17,497,000 plus, and that's sort of the starting point for the budget. I understand that the budget includes new assessment growth of just over $200,000. So for all the building activity, recent building activity that has taken place, then because those new homes, et cetera, are now paying property taxes, so that influences your current budget by approximately $200,000. And I understand that number is built into your current budget document. 1% increase in your taxes equals about $168,000. And currently, because of sort of the latest information, I know you've been getting memos from your finance staff, the budget sits about 3.76%, or $634,000 would be required if you're going to fund 100% of everything that's sitting in the budget document. So that's sort of a whirlwind overview of operating and capital. And I'm, again, before I move on to the next slide, I'm happy if anyone has any particular questions about that.
Councillor Watson, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sloan. So this is a hypothetical question. Back if we would have passed that budget before at 2.88%, and now it's up to 3.76, who makes up that difference in that 1%? Going forward, because we could hypothetically pass a 0% budget, and then if it still has to go up by a 1%, we have the funds to take care of it. Is that correct? I just don't know how that can just go up like that. Thanks.
Mr. Graves.
Well, perhaps I'll try and answer that question. And I know that your director of finance is online too, but I'll take an initial stab. And I'm just talking concepts. I don't want to talk particular numbers or anything, but so there's a couple of things. First of all, as you go through a budget process and time moves on, staff will bring to you additional adjustments that need to be made before the budget's actually locked down. And so I think that's part of what's happened. There's been some additional adjustments and some information. I've been in a position before where, particular, annual grant that we would receive from the government hasn't come in when we produce the budget document. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but as you get it, so you kind of do a little guesswork, your best guesses. And, but as you get closer and closer to landing on your budget, some of these sort of loose ends get a little bit tighter. Okay, so you want to be as tight as you can, but there can be adjustments. I know, a couple of years ago, when we were in the COVID regime, everything was backed up from, for example, MPAC that determines your new assessment, and we couldn't get a good handle on what the new assessment was or the building activities. We were taking best guesses and working through that. But to further that, throughout the year, there may be adjustments that are required because something happens even after your budget's passed, and your staff would come back to you and say, we have an additional financial challenge here, or we have a gain here, and they'll come back and help you address that in terms of how you would manage that to get through the calendar year. I hope that answers your question.
That does. Thank you.
Councillor Graham, then Councillor Halpin.
Perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps our treasurer could explain to the general public how that came from 2.88% to 3.76%.
Thank you. Archana's on. Okay. Archana,
Yeah.
please.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you would like, right after our current CEO, Mr. Wendell Graves is finished his presentation, I'm actually going to present that changes right as the presentation. So if you can just wait for a few minutes, that's the next.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Gupta-Harit. And Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. I just wanted to sort of add to the answer for Councillor Watson, and for anyone else wondering about that point, that on a more sort of nitty-gritty detail about how we went up 1%. Our original budget anticipated us taking one strategic action about the lift bridge, and we as a council voted to take a different one, which changed us by $131,000, which equates to about 1%. So as a sort of specific thing that has changed since our last deliberation, that would be something that we could look to.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Any other questions? Mr. Graves.
Thank you. Okay, so I've just in looking at the budget, I just wanted to identify some areas that, and there are many, but these are some of the larger ones that have some positive impact on the budget versus numbers that were in the budget for 2022. So there's been some changes in the delivery of solid waste management, both at the provincial level and local level. I think the whole recycling program, et cetera, the province has moved in some positive directions in terms of taking some of the burden off local municipalities in that area. And then you have your own internal program for the collection. So that impacts positively on the budget of around $280,000. And a few years ago, the province doled out to all municipalities funding what that they called modernization grants. And the intent of these funds were to be used by the local municipality to really modernize their practices and be prepared to sort of move into the next generation of running a business, et cetera. So included in your budget is part of that grant funding that's been sitting there of about $167,000 that's being applied to work that'll be done through in the area of digital transformation, et cetera. I know that most municipalities are in the business of, digitizing, getting their records on e-platforms, et cetera. So that's funding that came from the provincial government to help in the transformation of the way that you can do business on a digital platform. And then fortunately, there was a relatively, I think, significant reduction. And I know this fluctuates year over year in your police services costs. So there's a bit of savings here of around $135,000 in your police servicing costs. So I think that's good news for the municipality. But who knows what it's going to be like next year. These things fluctuate depending on the activity that takes place. And of course, that bill comes from the county, right? You don't control that bill. And I guess the last thing, and I guess these are just some areas. And I know there's others, but I just want to highlight a few that sort of came to my mind. The capital budget, in terms of the actual amount that is currently there to be supported by taxes, is about $164,000 less than was there last year. So there's a bit of a gain there in terms of the tax support. So, okay. Any question on that? All right. So there are obviously some pressures as well that are included in the budget. And wages are always a significant part of municipal budget. As is the case with this municipality. So the total salary and benefit costs for when you add all the salaries and the benefits together across the board in the municipality are about $9.6 million. And for the 2023 budget, the increase of those costs is around $897,000. That is derived from your current contract with QP that you have, and also from your salary grids. I believe they're tied to some indexing, so your whole grid moves up, and that's sort of a wise way to do business in a sense. But also, and again, I haven't got down in the weeds on this, you also would have a number of employees who would not only does the whole grid move up, but they're moving up on the grid because of their years of experience in the municipality as well. So that those numbers add together. So the total budget increase in the salary and wages area is around $897,000. Your insurance costs are increased by just over $100,000, and I know that all municipalities are faced with significant insurance costs this year. Yours is in that range. For a number of years, I understand that the municipality benefited from a reserve, a county road reserve, and that it was just a matter of time before that would be used up. And that basically had been depleted as of 2022. So there's, I think there's around $6,000 yet to come out of the county road reserve. But there's, so you have to, the costs haven't gone away, but now, there's about $260,000 worth of tax related expenses relating to the management of the county roads that would have been part of that reserve that has now been depleted. And then I know on March the 20th, you received a report from the Director of Finance that detailed a number of other items. And once I get done my presentation, I know she's got more information she wants to bring to council. And if there's any questions on that memo, then she can you know, address those directly. So those are some of the key pressures. Again, there's more. I just, in my cursory review, I wanted to identify some things that I saw pop out. So we'll just move to the last slide. It's just kind of a lot, just Q&A we've already talked about the fact that, you know, discussions such as things that don't impact the tax rate, such as the water rates, they're great. You need to have those discussions, but to have them maybe in a different form because they don't affect the bottom line. I understand that your next round of tax bills are really due to be out taxes for July 17th, somewhere in July. So we got to think about timelines in terms of tackle the budget. Certainly, you know, to get to a tax bill, there's a lot of work that has to be done once a budget is passed. In terms of developing the tax ratios and getting the platform set up to be able to put those bills in the mail. So I think, I don't know if I say the pressure's on or not, but you know, I think if we get much further past the end of this month, and hopefully we won't have to do that, there'd be a lot of pressure to get those tax bills. So a lot of work needs to be done in the next little while to get to a place, because you don't want to miss that window you just can't miss that window to get those final tax bills out. So I think, Your Worship, those are my overall comments. Unless anyone else has anything you'd like to ask me.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Just so I know, July, we have a tax bill. We also have one in September, do we not?
You may do. I'm not sure. The director can answer.
Okay, just something to touch on.
Yeah.
Ms.
Yes, so no, July 17th is the final bills when they get out. We do have the installment for the people to pay twice, like after July bill. So they have a deadline of August and then they can pay one more installment in November. But July 17th is the deadline to send the bills out. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands this tax rate and everything has to go into a system which is called Opta. And that system then calculates the school boards, the everything else, and the county rates and everything that will also dictate how much we are paying everybody else. So it's a full like system and that these deadlines come from province for us.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Graves? Are we okay? Is it now over to Ms. Gupta Harit? I'll pass it to you, Mr. Graves.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that your director has some comments. Just some other. I guess my last comment I might suggest is that when we start talking about the actual budget, that it might be helpful to sort of deal with the operating budget and focus on those things, and then the capital budget, and try and keep the two discussions a little bit separate just to help ease. So we're not going all over the board, but I'll leave that to you. Sometimes that's easier to do. You can help with the discussion. So
Thank you. Ms.
So
Gupta
am I
Harit.
starting? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mayor. Susie, can
Thank
you please put Susie, can you put March 20th report on the web, please? So, Mr. Mayor, through you to the council, I did provide this report as a part of the package for the budget deliberations for this meeting. I won't waste your time going through all the documents. I'm assuming everybody has read it. I would move to page number 2 and the bottom area of that. Susie, can you please move to that where we have said there are changes on page 2? And while Susie is trying to put that on camera, I would also mention the documents that you have just received, the paper copies that you're looking at. These are the questions I received from Councillor Graham yesterday for the budget meeting. And I've tried my best within the limited time to provide as best of the knowledge and the answers we can provide at this time. Some of them were discussed, but there were additional information that was needed. So I have just got them printed for you all, and so that you all have the copy when I speak about those items. And you don't have to follow things around, just the wording from me. Susie, are we up? Can everybody see March report? Yeah, page 2, please. This is February 16th. This one, please. Yes. Thank you. So on February 16th, we had also provided one report to the whole council where we made some changes, and we said just to keep it at 2.88, there were few things we could do, and it included few things, and I'll talk to all of them as mentioned below. Susie, can you move it a little bit up, please? The 5 items that you can see down there. Further down, please, or up. Right here. So for the 2023 budget, there are a few things that I would like to tell that to help manage and keep the rate at 2.88, the staff had provided few options, which included some changes. For example, from the November 1st date, 2022, when the budget was actually posted, there were few changes. For example, there was a reduction in OMPF grant for about 104,000. Then there was an increase in the Cattle Creek Conservative Authority levy of 8,000. There was a reduction of insurance overall from the budgeted amount to the actual quotes that we received. That was reduction for $37,247. Then there was an increase in Planning Advisory Committee budget of $35,000. We also proposed to remove the Fire Prevention and Training Coordinator role, which costed us otherwise $94,861, including salaries and wages, salaries and benefits. So overall, this was what we had proposed, that to keep it at 2.88 will do all these things. And these came as, some of them came as instructions, some of the things we decided as staff to propose to the council that we could do that. Back in February, council also decided that and directed us that they would like to keep the the amounts to be paid for the county lift bridge, and the operations be kind of continue to be conducted as they were previously done. And that increased the tax levels for 131, or pressure of 131,168 for the municipality. So now all these above changes, they result in $146,168 tax levy increase over the original budget dated November 1st, which is resulting as a change in the tax rate increase from 2.88 to 3.76. So as through you, Mr. Mayor, this is one of the things that Councillor Graham had asked. So this is the reason, and I think Councillor Morgan had already kind of alluded to that as well. So this is what we have as changes. And I'm happy to move to all the questions that Councillor Graham has asked. And if you guys have any questions about this particular change, I'm happy to respond to those as well. And any other questions that any of the council members would have, will be happy to, consider and kind of respond as we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. It might be helpful for us, Ms. Gupta, with respect to the page that you've updated. when it goes through the from federal government, the nets here. Did you want to go through those individually, please?
Absolutely, I can. So if you see the change, do you want me to go line by line? I can go line by line. It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the changes mostly are, for example, in the medical center, it's only $319, as you see. The Belmont Library, you can see is $607,045. Basically, this was moved to the council, so that's a change we made. JAC committee, that's only $583, very little. Policing services, as Mr. Graves had already mentioned, that we got a reduction in the OPP billing. And I just want to make a comment here that these bills are based on number of calls received. So that's why it fluctuates every year. So it's based on how many calls were received last year, and they kind of project. So I would say, fortunately, there were not many calls in Central Elgin probably last year. So we got a reduction for the billing statement for 2023 by 135,000 or $834 in that billing. The next one is a waste management. And we talked about $282,718. I think this is because of the green bins and all the the program that we have introduced. And my colleague Jeff Brooks would be able to talk more about that if anybody has any detailed questions. Then the other one is the county roads. Can we move it a little down or up, please? County roads. Yeah. So that is $96,234. And that is basically due to the changes, within the, because we moved some funding from reserves. So that much room we have there. And then the final is the, as you see, total capital levy is 164,000. And county lift bridge is more increased, 131,000 you see there, and the second last line. It's positive influence. And then we go back to the total capital, and that is only change of 164,500, like it's because of the reduction in the total capital levy. So these are the major changes here. And as you see,
Sorry, I lost you at police services. If we can go to bylaw enforcement, please. 61,000 to 70,000, that's about 10%. And it's vehicle rental and staffing costs. Is that correct?
absolutely, that's correct.
Can you give an example that's gone up for 10% because we're going to be renting vehicles, there's more staff? I'd just like some explanation.
I can certainly provide that. I would ask my colleague Lloyd to jump in, please.
Mr. Barron, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 2022 budget contemplated on bylaw enforcement, the manager of bylaw position, and that was approved as part of the 2022 budget deliberations. So the 2022 budget did not reflect a full year of salary for that position. So when you compare 2022 budget compared to 2023 budget, excuse me, the 2023 budget incorporates a full year of salary for that position, which wasn't contemplated in 2022 because the position was approved as part of the 2022 budget deliberations, and that position was not filled until April of 2022.
Okay, and the vehicle rental, it's listed as something different this year. Is that something new, or we're renting a vehicle for the manager of enforcement? If you could explain, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So again, that vehicle was rented for the is rented for the full year in 2023 compared to only seasonally for 2022. That position leaves the office on a regular basis on a many times a day to deal with bylaw infractions. So there is a vehicle for that position to drive so that there's accountability, as well as when they come up to a residence, they're identifiable. They're not getting out of a personal vehicle.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that there's 5 seasonal officers. Is that correct, Mr. Perrin?
Please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's 5 seasonal officers that was in 2022. With the reduction of the paid parking lots that council directed at already in 2023, reducing paid parking for the pharmacy parking lot as well as the visitor center parking lot. We've scaled back the number of seasonal bylaw officers from 5 to 4. That being said, their wages do not impact the tax rate. They are fully funded from the paid parking revenue.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
So again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Parent. So if there, where's that cost savings going then? It's going to the parking revenues, and there's a cost savings there. And where does that cost savings end up, please?
Thank you, Mr. Perrin.
So based on the budget, you'll see that there is no cost on the tax rate for the paid parking program. Whatever revenue is realized from paid parking revenue goes to offset expenses, and the net revenue after expenses gets transferred into the paid parking revenue or reserve fund that council has the ability to utilize for future projects, parking lot improvements to the waterfront, whatever you wish.
Thank you. Any other questions on that item? Moving next, Ms. Gupta-Reed, I just want you to give me an idea here about the animal control, which has gone up 60% from 17 to 28,000, please.
So this cost comes from St. Thomas. So we have gotten an estimate from them, but we haven't really gotten any exact amounts back from them. We haven't heard the real number from them, but this was an estimated amount that comes from them. So it's a bill that we pay, if that makes any sense. And I think my colleague Lloyd can speak more to that. Lloyd, is it correct, right?
Mr. Perrin.
Yeah, that's correct. So the municipality of Central Elgin has contracted services to the city of St. Thomas, whereby they provide animal shelter. Councillor Graham asked this question in her email yesterday afternoon. So the 2022 budget omitted the cost of the animal services contract from the city of St. Thomas. So we caught that in the 2023 budget. And when you refer to the 2022 actuals compared to the 2023 proposed budget, that expense is in there, and it's similar to what the actuals were for 2020.
Thank you. Just on to development services here. I know that that's got to do with our agreement with St. Thomas with respect to the increase.
The CPAC, yeah.
That's the line that was, I think, 30,000 from 473 to 541. So we have that budget staffing cost. When it comes to municipal zoning bylaw amendment levy share, could someone just give me an idea about that, please?
Yeah, Lloyd can speak to that.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin.
I didn't quite understand the question, Mr. Mayor. So if you could just maybe repeat.
Just know that we have from our development services, we've gone up, and I know that the budget from our shared agreement went up 25,000. But there's another 41, and it says staffing costs, which would be, I think, under the CPAC budget, unless there's staffing costs specific to Central Elgin. And then it says municipal zoning bylaw amendment levy share. So I just wanted a little bit of understanding. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So yes, our contract with CPAC did go up from 2022 as a result of salary increases, as well as there is an additional staff person on a contract basis that will be assisting on the zoning bylaw amendment and urban design guidelines project. It is contracted out to a consultant to undertake that, but there's still considerable work that has to be done by both CPAC staff as well as CPO staff, which is Central Elgin Planning Office, as well as Municipality of Central Elgin staff. So that's part of the increase, as well as In 2022, we had money in the budget to finalize the official plan amendment. However, that amount of money, that project is completed. But the cost, excuse me, to update the zoning bylaw amendment and urban design guidelines is higher than what was contemplated through consulting services for the OP amendment in 2022. So that's why you see an increase in consulting services in that budget line.
Thank you. And just to confirm, so we have the increase from the shared agreement and the staffing costs. Mr. Perrin, is that someone that will be working for Central Elgin? Is it a temporary position? Is it, I just wanted some information on that extra staffing cost, please.
So that additional individual works for the Central Elgin Planning Office. However, some of their time is dedicated towards work on Central Elgin's behalf. So they're part of the, they are assisting with the zoning bylaw, comprehensive zoning bylaw and urban design guidelines project.
Thank you. There's a share agreement with CPAC for 70-30, as I recall. Is this extra staffing fall into the 70-30 ratio?
Yes, so that additional staffing is as per the agreement, and that agreement is based on assessment sharing that factors into it. So as each one of the municipalities' assessment changes, then that agreement proration changes as well.
Okay, so the 70-30 we pay on the general, which is, I think our fee goes up to almost 300,000 this year. And on top of that, can I just get an idea of what approximately what the extra is for the extra staffing, please, on top of the 300?
I can get that and get back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I just was curious because when I had the meeting with St. Thomas about this, we were already concerned that it was going up a certain amount and I didn't know it was going up extra for that. Any more information I'd appreciate. Thanks, Mr. Perrin. Ms. Gupta-Reid, I just want to come down here to the next item. We've gone through Public Works. We're looking at waste management. Waste management, there's a reduction. And I know there's some changes with that. Does anyone have any questions about that with respect to the recycling program? Okay, when it comes to parks, the approximately 15% increase. Now it's staffing costs, insurance, contracted services. Mr. Brooks, help me understand that. Why is it with respect to the staffing costs, grout, if I got the right piece here? No, staffing costs, insurance, contracted services. Can you give me just a little bit of an idea about that increase, please?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. At the end of 2021, early 2022, a QP job evaluation was done for the unionized staff. Parks and Recreation staff received approximately a 15% increase based on the job evaluation and market rates for similar positions in the area. So that's basically what makes up that 15%.
Contracted services, could you explain that, please?
Yeah, we're seeing an increase in most of our contracted services as we've seen inflation go up here over the last couple of years at about 6% between 2021 and 2022 and another 6% into 2023. So that's reflected in our contracted services.
Okay. When it comes to the actual size and when we're doing our budget for parks, when things that are needed to be done, if it's a slide or if it's any equipment like that, when we're budgeting for that, how do you do that? Is it on an annual basis? You look at what the needs are versus the wants, or how do you get an idea of your overall budget for parks?
As far as replacements, minor replacements, those would be included in parts and supplies. For example, if we were replacing a slide. So that's based on time of need and inspections throughout the year.
Okay, but a new park would fall under capital.
Yeah, any new park would, major projects such as a new park would fall under capital.
Okay, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind indulging me on street lighting, something we do annually? Is it on a need basis? I find this all very informative. So if you could give me an idea about the street lighting, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, the street lighting budget reflects the cost to maintain the street lights. There's no additions in that budget. Any major additions would be included in a capital budget.
Understood. Again, I appreciate the indulgence. It's all very interesting as we find out the differences. And with respect to county roads, the County Road Reserve Fund is eliminated. I understand that. Again, this is county roads versus our own roads. Could I help? Again, you indulge me with a differentiator here?
Sure. So municipal roads versus county roads. Municipal roads obviously owned by the municipality. The municipality performs maintenance on its own roads. County roads, we have an agreement through the roads maintenance agreement with the county. So municipal staff, QP, unionized personnel perform maintenance on the county roads. And all those costs for the county roads are positioned in the county roads budget.
So the municipality pays for the upkeep of the county road.
The municipality, we front the cost. Well, we are reimbursed a certain portion from the county. It's right up around 800,000. I'd have to take a look here, but we have found over the last couple of years that we do exceed the available funding from the county. So that's where you see this approximately $250,000 of excess cost compared to what is funded by the county.
Thank you. And just for my own knowledge, historically, this County Road Reserve Fund, is that something we see that the county should be looking at? Again, was it an interim, just some history on that and whether we have an opportunity to look for or lobby for that in the future? I'd appreciate any info.
Sure. So that county road reserve had been funded over the last several years where it was found that the municipality had not expended as much as the contribution we were given by the county. We took a good look at the county roads budget 2 years ago. And previously, the municipality wasn't budgeting for overhead costs into the county roads budget. It was all being covered by the municipal roads budget. So it was helping to fund the county roads budget. So as we made that change, the county road budget has gone up so that we can properly account for the actual costs for maintaining county roads. So our hope is, as we move along over the next several years, we'll be able to build a case to the county when the next road maintenance agreement comes up to get additional funding for the county road network.
Councillor Halpin, then Councillor Graham, please. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Mr. Brooks. At present, the level of service that we provide doing the roadworks for the county, are we meeting the requirements of our agreement or are we exceeding them?
That's a difficult question. For summer maintenance, we meet the required maintenance standards. The winter control, you could argue that we do exceed the minimum maintenance standards set out by the province. However, in those minimum maintenance standards, there is a clause about preventing the formation of ice. So, for example, on Highbury, the minimum maintenance standards would suggest that the municipality should be out and clearing snow once we get up to 8 centimeters of snow on the road. However, if there's 2 centimeters of snow on the road and the motorists are packing that snow down and creating ice, then we could be found deficient. So it's a difficult one. A lot of times it's a judgment call based on the weather, but you could argue it both ways that we do exceed or we don't in some cases. So it's not, I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but we tend to err on the side of precaution rather than, not so.
Supplementary count? Nope. Councillor Halpin. Councillor Graham, please.
When does that agreement come up for renegotiation?
We are currently negotiating that agreement right now. It's apparent that within that agreement, we are not at this point going to get sufficient funding to cover all of our costs. But again, our hope is over the next 4 years, we can help build a case for the next round of negotiations to, receive some more funding.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
So, sorry, you're currently in negotiations. When is that foreseen to be done, that agreement to be done?
It should be done likely within the next 2 to 3 months.
Councillor Graham, please.
And you're foreseeing, Mr. Brooks, you're foreseeing that it's still not going to cover our costs on this?
That is correct. There was a study done a year in advance of the negotiation with the local municipalities, which laid out the groundwork for the negotiation for the new agreement, which basically spells out how much funding the municipality is going to receive. The municipality is not going to receive sufficient funding to cover all of its cost this time around.
Mr. Graves.
I might just ask Mr. Brooks a question just right on that. Would all the lower tiers be in the same position, or is it just Central Elgin that's going to have a deficit?
Some, I would say not all the lower tiers are in the same position. So you may find some lower tiers that are happy with the current funding levels that they receive. And there may be others such as Central Elgin that may see that there is a bit of a deficit there.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brooks, if we are continuing to lose money doing a contract, typically in the private sector, we would just stop doing that contract. But what would that end up costing us? Because we actually give Elgin County the money. So if Elgin County outsourced that, paid more money, it's kind of a give and take on that whole thing. But I do understand if we continue to lose money, then maybe we don't want that contract. And what would the savings be?
Mr. Brooks.
The municipality doesn't really have any out to get out of this contract. When amalgamation happened, the order basically spelled out how the county roads would be maintained and that they would be maintained by the lower tier. So we can't just say we're unhappy with the level of funding and get out. But like I keep saying, we really need to start building a case for the next go around here at 2027.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Councillor Graham.
So just so I'm making it as simple for me to understand as possible, we're responsible for the county roads. We bill them whatever our bills are, and they're not giving us the full amount. And is it because we're exceeding the standards, or is it just because we're doing more work? What are the actual reasons? So that's my number one question. I'll let you answer that one first, Mr. Brooks, and then go from there.
Mr. Brooks.
The funding agreement is based on a calculation made by centerline kilometer of county road, as well as the centerline kilometers, the category of road. For example, Highbury Ave is a category 2 road based on the amount of traffic it gets. So we have a certain amount of funding that's calculated based on the centerline kilometers of Highbury. Ferguson Line, another county road, it may be a class 4 road. So we only get a certain amount of dollars to maintain those roads. So it's based on a calculation, not the actual costs that are incurred. So for example, we might have a very heavy winter with a lot of snow. We may well exceed the available funding in 1 year. The start of this winter, for example, right up through until about March, we didn't have a whole lot of snow. So we weren't out doing a whole lot of winter maintenance. So, we didn't expend as much as we might next year when we get more snow. But regardless, we're only going to get what that calculation states we get.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Graham?
I have so many follow-ups. Maybe Mr. Brooks and I could meet and have a discussion about it, because it just seems to me like if we're in negotiations right now, why don't, not that you don't, I'm sure that you do, Mr. Brooks. I feel like we need a strategy to make sure that they are reimbursing us, or they are paying for the level that of service that we're giving them, or the work that we're doing, because to me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Mr.
I'd be
Brooks?
happy to sit down offline and we can kind of go through the history over the last few years.
Thank you. I just have a quick question here. Now, under county roads, we've got 96,234 as the elimination of the county road reserve budget, which is the same as the money for the county lift bridge underneath. Now, I'm not sure if this is a typo, but my question is 131,000 for the staffing costs. Did we pay it last year? Because that's the amount I know that we're paying for 2023, but I don't know what the 96 is in for last year. We either paid it at 131 or I don't think we paid it at all, because I think the contract came out and there was some back and forth with the county on this. Could I just get clarification on those numbers? Ms. Gupta-Harit, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. So it's not a typo. It's kind of the same number. So it's by chance that it is the same number. It's not a typo at all. And I would say because the county, so we did what we have done is, like, for example, we have not, as Mr. Brooks just said, the winter was little mild this year. So we hadn't used all the funds. So there was about $100,000 that was actually left. And we did point that out in February 16th report, that we had that in reserve. So when we did the lift bridge calculations, we used that same just to get to the zero budget. We tried to move the lift bridge from the, so let me step back first. So we used to have county roads and county lift bridge in one, under one headline or a line item. In 2023 budget, because we hoped that we could go back to county roads are managed differently. County bridge is basically managed differently. So county bridge, the contract was coming up again, as we had mentioned it to you before, and we proposed that we should ask county to pay for it, whatever expense we have. As Mr. Brooks have mentioned, roads are totally different way they are dealt with. So we took the county bridge, lift bridge out of the roads, and we tried to make it net zero budget so that they they pay and we get that money and it's net zero to us for the lift bridge. As Councillor Graham was proposing that we should talk about the roads, it was the same proposal for the county lift bridge, where we had a little bit more leeway to go back to county and say, can you please pay, because this is $10,000 that you pay is not really helping us. So we took it out, and that's why the number is kind of showing you the way it is showing. Does that make
Can I
sense?
just interrupt for a sec? Did we pay $96,000, 234 for staffing costs for the lift bridge in 2022, please?
We did. We were paying all of the money because we had that contract until 2022. But at the end of 2022, it has expired kind of, and we wanted to renegotiate it this year, and we wanted them to pay for it.
Understood, and we went through that. I don't think it wasn't a part of it. It was all or nothing. But I was told we paid the operating costs for the bridge in 2022.
2020. That is correct.
But you're saying, but the 131,000 is what I was told we paid last year. And you're saying it's 96,234 we paid last year?
No. Sorry. What I was trying to say is last year we had county roads and lift bridge under one heading. In 2023, we took the lift bridge out and county roads separately. And lift bridge does cost us 131,168 based on all the salary and wages and all the staffing costs that we know that we're gonna need to operate the county bridge.
Okay, so we paid 131 in 2022 is the question.
I can get you the exact number. I'll get that to you in a minute. Okay, please.
No, it's fine. It's just when the councillor, deputy mayor and I were dealing with County of Elgin. We were told it was 130 last year and it would be 130 this year. So I think it's important that we have that number. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other further questions on this piece, council? And if I could ask under the purview here of the mayor for a 5-minute recess, would everyone agree to that? Thank you very much. short break there, always important. So continuing on where we left off, are there any other questions? And I'm looking at the page here. If there's any other questions from the changes in net revenue expenditures, please, Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Archana, if you can just take me through the council, general government, fire department increases. I'm not sure if I missed that part or I just couldn't hear you correctly because of. So if you could just run me through why those are increasing those amounts as well, please.
I will. Before that, through Mayor, yourself, Mayor Sloan, if I can go back to the question that you had and provide you the numbers for the county lift bridge, please. If
I'm
that's
sorry,
okay with.
Hey, they're getting the slide. I apologize.
So we were talking about this $96,000, $96,234 for the county roads and lift bridge number that you were asking for, like how much we are actually paying and what was the amounts for 2022 and 2023. So I do have those numbers. So the total expenses for 2022 were $106,165. So 106,165 for 2022. And for 2023, it's $141,168. And because they only pay us $9,931, so rest of the amount of $96,234 were actually taken from the county roads reserve that we had last year. But now because that is depleted, we don't have that much money around. So we have a net pressure of 131 because they only pay us $9,931. Does that help?
It does. So, but the 96,000 from the roof reserve wasn't taken against the 244 from the elimination of county
No.
roads. It was used for the bridge.
No, it was for the lift bridge
Thank
because
you.
it was part in 2022, they were together.
Okay. Councillor Graham, sorry, you had a question and I think I overtook it, but thanks, Ms. Gupta Harit.
I'll go back to councillors. So Councillor Graham, if you don't mind
Thank you.
repeating it one more time, thank you.
Oh, sorry. If you could just go over council, the council increase general government and fire department, just so that I can understand those increases from 2022 budget to 2023 budget.
Sounds
Please.
good. Can we move the slide a little down, please?
Sorry,
So,
Miss.
go ahead, please.
Sorry, Archana, I don't think Susie understood. Did you want a different
This is
slide?
fine. No, this is the one. Are you referring to the document that I shared with you? Or you want to go through
No, I'm
this one?
speaking about the current one that we're looking at on the page there.
Yeah, okay. So council from 204 to 222, there's a change of about 18,000 or increase of 18,000. This is because the changes mostly. So remember until 2022, we were still not open for conventions and all that kind of stuff because of the COVID. But in end of 2022, we started opening for that stuff. So we have estimated that in 2023, there will be more travel and convention attending and all those kind of things. And then there are ABCs, advisory boards and committees. And there could be some legal, kind of from previous experience, there could be some cost given the council is new. So we had anticipated that there may be some legal advisory that the mayor or the council members would need. So we have kind of estimated a little bit based on the trends we had seen previously. Does that answer your question, Councillor Graham, for council?
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
So the legal went up from 1,000 to 10,000, the consulting fees from 5 till 10,000. Are those correct numbers? And then travel as well at 5,000?
Yes, because as we say that that's from what we have seen in last year. So we have kind of estimated the same.
And sorry, could you then take us through, if no one else has any other questions about that, If you could take us through general government and then fire as well, Archana, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in the general gov particularly, you can see there is a difference of $401,000. So we have OMPF reduction of 104,000. There was an increase of the insurance, as you know. And even though the change is only a little bit, but we had estimated at a little bit higher. Now it is actually, I think we estimated at 35%. Now it's about 22%. And then we also have, there are two positions that are in general government, general gov area, which is Director of Digital Transformation and also the Legislative Coordinator. I just want to make sure that we all understand that, yes, there is a change, but for example, the the Director of Digital Transformation, that salary and wage is supported by the grant for modernization. That's not a net change on the tax or, there's no impact of the tax revenue. And the Legislative Coordinator, that position has moved from one department to another. So it used to exist within the asset management. So asset management had given up that position. So there is net zero change per se for that particular position. Then also in 2023 onwards, $25,000 are transferred each year to the election reserves, because we have to kind of come up for every 4 years there is election, as you are aware. We have to come up for some money and transfer the monies to the reserve so that we can have some money at the end of 4-year term of the council for the next elections.
Councillor Graham.
So just to confirm, the legislative coordinator position was moved from the asset management. So there's a reduction in asset management
Absolutely.
wages that's in there.
Yes, and that increase in the general gov.
Thank you.
And if I may, though, there is an increase in asset managed staffing costs from 351 to 371. So that $20,000 is extra to the removal of the position, please.
No, that if that would be any extra, that would be in the general gov. It would be like 3%, as we said, talked about CPI, changes and any positions that we may have, like seasonal staff or other costs. Like it wouldn't be the change that we had actually done. It should be, if there was any change, like if there was an increase in salary for that particular position, that should be reflected in general gov, not in the asset management.
Any other questions on this? Oh, Mr. Perrin, please.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So I believe unless I misunderstood, Mr. Mayor, you quoted a number of 371,000 for salaries in asset management. The actual salaries are above that. So the 371,000 includes IT expenses as well as the overhead. Just as a point of clarification. So the non-union salaries for 2023 did move from 2022 of amount of $262,054 to $277,588.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin. So the staffing costs that are listed as the overage of 20,000, just to explain that is
the actual salaries themselves are actually increased by 15,000. That is because in 2022 there was a vacancy for some time on the analyst position, and that has since been filled. So that's taking into account the full year salary for that position, as well as the increases as per the salary and wage budget or policy that
Bylaw.
council has adopted.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Gupta-Reed, do you have, would you like to move
Fire
forward?
department.
I'm sorry?
Fire department, please, because that's what the next question
Thank you.
Councillor Graham had. So Councillor Graham, this one through you, Mayor Sloan, this one is actually, so I just want to just make a blanket statement. I and the previous CEO, Mr. Shipway, we both joined in early 2021. And given the state the financials were for the municipality, we had to rejig a lot. So 2021 for the budget 2022 was a learning thing for us. We did not understand many things. We did have multiple line items combined and all that stuff. So to ensure there was more transparency, there was more accountability, there was more clarity about things, we had changed few things. So for example, VFI's insurance, that was not part of the insurance under fire department. It was like all over the place, kind of within the fire department. We brought it out and put it as a separate line item under the fire department. So we did clean up a lot, but 2022 was more learning for us. 2023 is where we can absolutely be very confident that this is one we can stand for, and we can say, yes, this one is very clear, and we have made whatever changes we wanted to make instead of being more transparent and accountable for our actions as well. So for example, this increase you see is for the VFS insurance. That was not part of it. General insurance liability, that has increased as well. Then also we had the equipment and facility expenses. We also have reserve transfers. If you want, I think I provided that detail into one of the questions you had asked previously as well, and I can spell it out, but you do have that answer in the questions as well. So this all is the increase because of these things.
Thank you. Do you want any questions, or do you want to continue on, Ms. Gupta Hari, please?
So I would want to understand which other item you would want me to refer to, because we have gone down and then up, and
Understood. Do you have more presentation to provide for us
No,
today?
this is all I have. Like, this is all the stuff I wanted to show you, the changes. I wanted to show you where we are at this point, and any direction that you may have, and any questions that Ms. Councillor Graham had, I've already provided you in writing. And if you still have more questions, happy to answer any questions that you may have, or the council may have.
Thank you. Councillor Graham?
Thank you, everyone.
If there's no other questions, I would like Archana or Ms. Gupta to go through the answers of the email that I sent out with my budget questions, if everyone is okay with that.
Yep, I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
So you all, this is not a digital document that I can share on my screen. Susie can share on her screen, but that definitely is what you have in front of you. So I will move to her to page number 1, first of all, where I'm talking about Councillor Graham had suggested that she would like to see a 0% budget. My response to that in particular is that is to be done at the direction of the council. If council would direct me to go for a 0% budget, we will do that. However, that will come at a cost that council would again have to provide me the direction. What service levels would they want to cut? Or what other things they would want to cut on so that we can go for 0% budget, because we don't have those many reserves. We do not have any services where I can make any recommendation to cut, because I don't believe we are exceeding anywhere where we can say we can do the service level cuts, and we will be like doing minimal or like, for example, roads, county roads or our roads maintenance. Like, we cannot say we are not going to clean it up when the snow happens, or maintain them, those kind of things. So it is up to the council, whatever they would want to cut on, and wherever they would want us to provide, they will have to provide that direction, and we will work accordingly. So that is the first thing, and I would not have any recommendations to make on that. And I am honestly not sure where would I get that much money that would bring you to like 17 million of taxes, where I would get that money to bring it down to 0%. So after that, I'll go to the second question, page number 5. So she had asked about 2020 budget surplus. They are not ready yet. We are at the final stages of audit. We contacted them this morning as well, and they are going to our partner for their blessings, as we say. And hopefully I can have some draft information ready for you for the council by 15th, as had promised. So because at the last stage, what happens is there are a lot of journal entries that are directed. So after that, we'll know what exact position do we have. So we are at
Just-
last stages at this point.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gupta. Councillor Bachman has a question, sir.
Sure.
Actually, more of a statement, I guess, at this point. First of all, I want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into this report. I'm looking at this from a council position, and that is that this budget that we're looking at and going through in detail was set forth by the previous council at around, I'm assuming, 3% is what they set the budget to be around. And our staff was directed by council to do such. And now we're at a position where we're going through this line by line as a council when we gave no direction whatsoever to our staff for a 0% budget. So we're kind of working at a position of recovery when staff was never given a direction of 0%. And I don't ever remember a council discussion other than maybe one-on-one or off the cuff where we instructed our staff to come back with a 0% budget. Yet we're going through this line by line to get to a 0% budget. And I'm wondering at this point, what possible benefit are we at this point when we've got our experts here who are supposed to do this? When if anything else, we should be looking at a direction for our staff. And at this time in the year, we're a third of the way through our year, or coming up to a third of the way through our year, when we've got tenders and budgets and all the things to get through. Are we wasting time, I guess, for lack of a better word? When to come back with a 0% budget, to give these people the chance to come back with it's going to take months. And when they come back, we're supposed to review their recommendations and then make that decision. When we're at a point in April where we should be saying, this needs to be done, here's the budget, go to work. Once again.
Thanks, Councillor Bachman. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. I very much agree with that. We had the potential to have a budget meeting on December 13th. And if 4 months ago we had directed staff that we'd like a 0% budget, we could be looking at that budget today or even last month and making decisions about it. But to be asking for a 0% on 21 hours notice after we've had this many months to consider the issue, it's really unreasonable that we could even hope to accomplish that today, and the number of weeks it would take to prepare it, and then to consider it, and then to hope to get it out to the community in time for that final tax statement. I think that at this point, we have to understand that that's something that we've missed the boat on.
If we could continue, and that's great. Thanks, Councillor Halpin. Councillor Graham, or I just have a quick question before we get into that, because obviously we're going to be doing some discussions after the fact. But for information, is it valuable to the council to go through some of the questions, regardless of what the request was? Councillor Halpin.
Respectfully, for the sake of an efficient meeting, Mayor Sloan, I would suggest that it would be useful to go through the ones that aren't already answered within the budget that we had time to read.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, although I appreciate Councillor Bachman's and Halpin's comments, I was elected on ensuring that taxes were as low as they possibly could be, and I take that mandate very seriously. So I would like to go through all the questions. I did feel responsible for telling Archana that that's what the people of Port Stanley in my ward are looking for. That's what they've communicated to me, and that's what I've communicated here.
Thank you. If we're okay to continue on for, yep, sorry, Councillor Bachman, please.
One last comment.
Yes, sir.
I do as well, through you, Mr. Mayor, look to this, but the position is the job of the budget is their responsibility, and they received zero direction from us on coming back with a 0% budget. That is the point that I'm trying to make here. It has nothing to do with us being responsible and fiscally managing, blah, 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 blah. Their job is to bring us options and choices. And we as a council did not give them that direction.
I appreciate that comment. Thank you, Councillor Bachman. If we could, and when we have the discussion, I hope that what we could do today is if we go through some of the questions here for information, get an idea, after which we can talk a little bit about the capital budget and have some more information, and then we'll get into discussion about next steps. Is that okay? Is that the will of council right now? Thank you. Ms. Gupta Harid, if you could just continue on with these, we'll go through some of these questions in an expeditious manner. Thank you.
Right. And I would like to please request everybody, please call me Archana. We don't have to go through. I know I have a long name.
Thank you, Archana.
Sometimes please say Archana, Archie, whatever you want to say, but it's okay. Fine. Thank you. Okay. So the second question is, where is the money from tax sales properties located in the budget? So I just want to make sure that everybody understands tax sales is a process where we have outstanding amounts that have, or the taxes from the properties that have not been paid for years, at least 3 years, as per the Municipal Act and the guidelines. And when we get through the bids and any money we receive, we as municipality are only directed to keep the outstanding amounts that were outstanding for us. So for example, if say one of the properties we had outstanding taxes for say 100,000 and we got a bid for 500,000, we gave it for 500,000, we only get to keep 100,000. The 400,000 goes back to the province and we have to submit as is rest of the money to the court with all the paperwork. And the tax sales that we did in November last year and everything, as of March 31st, we have already submitted all the amounts to the courts. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands this process. So this will be like basically writing, either we will write off the amounts or we will recoup those outstanding amounts that were there. So it's not part of the revenue per se.
Thank you, Archana. I have a quick question. Is that an annual thing that we do the sales, or is it just as an as-needed basis? Again,
No,
very
so-
informative on general items, so thank you. I know the
Yeah,
last one
so-
was done between the two councils.
Yes, so one of the things that I would mention is it was done after 10 years, first time last year, after I've joined. So it was not done in last 10 years. So we kind of went through a lot of stuff, but now we have, with the guidance from Mr. Paul Chipre, we have made it an annual process. So we will not be waiting for 10 years to collect the taxes.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next one. So 281, this was about the savings on the recycling program. So savings of 281, 518 from it's due to the blue box transition program. And I think during the just a few minutes ago, we have discussed this. So I don't want to go into much detail. Number 4, St. Thomas Shelter. So we do not have received a word yet from St. Thomas on this animal shelter thing. So what is the parking equipment rental? Next, number 5, what is the parking equipment rental, and is seen to decrease now the 2 parking lots. So the equipment is not rented. Municipality owns it. So there are no budget savings in that. So basically that's a sunk cost for us. Additionally, the paid parking program, that has no impact on the tax rate because it's a fee supported through parking revenue. So any cost, as Mr. Perrin had already alluded to, that it's kind of revenue goes into parking and that goes into reserve that council would be able to use later on when they wish to for any kind of projects that will come up. The question number 6 is the drinking water quality management position being proposed. So I won't read all the questions like fully, but I'll just go through first line or something like that. So a full job rate analysis has yet to be done, but the position was budgeted for the pay band at 8 level in that grade. So it was similar to the building inspector, engineering technologist, and asset management analyst, because we do need, these positions need some certifications. So it's hard to get somebody at lower levels than pay grade 8, which is kind of our pay grade for more licensed people or who have some certifications to do this kind of job.
Archana, may I interrupt for a moment, please? So
Sure.
when we talk about water, paying for water, is this position not paid for by the water revenues?
I would have to defer this one to Jeff. Jeff, if you can please speak to that.
Thank you,
This
Mr. President.
position would be paid for through the water and the wastewater rates.
Thank you. And Councillor Graham?
Archana, if you could just clarify to me, so under parking, equipment rentals is what I was talking about. It went from 0% budget of last year to $10,000 this year. So that's what I was talking about, the parking equipment rental. Can you explain that cost increase of 10 grand?
I need to just go back to that document. Just give me 1 second, please. What document you're referring to, Counselor? Because parking I'm seeing in this document is 0. I may be missing on something.
Page 52,
Of the budget document?
operating budget, parking, equipment rental, $10,000 budgeted in 2023.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm getting there. Thank you. Equipment rental. I see that here for 2023. I'll defer this to Lloyd. Lloyd, can you please answer this question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Parent, please.
So the equipment rental includes a couple of things. One is the equipment, two-way radio communication equipment that we utilize during the summer, as well as sorry, that's what the majority of that cost is for. So, and again, this doesn't impact the tax rate. So if you continue on the subsequent page, you'll actually see on page 53 that the parking net budget is actually a 0 for the tax rate. Okay, and then the line above that looks at transfers to reserves. So again, it's a net 0 impact on the tax supported budget.
Councillor Graham.
And sorry, you said there was a transfer of reserve amount there? I'm not seeing that. Is that a different page?
No, page number 53.
Page 53, transfers.
Transferred to
Paid parking
reserve.
reserves, $411,725 for 2023. Now that could be impacted based on the previous council direction of not charging for parking lots, paid parking in the pharmacy parking lot as well as the visitor center parking lot. But this document was based on 2022, utilizing paid parking on all of those lots.
I think at the end of the day, the reserve would go a little lower as a result of all those decisions. Correct, Lloyd? We won't be able to transfer the same amount.
As far as the actual transfer, Mr. Mayor, through you, sorry, the transfer is what it is. Paid parking is influenced on revenue is impacted by a number of outside factors, weather, for example, weather forecasts, just basic demand. We see paid parking revenue is influenced by the weather forecast in the morning. The weather forecast is predicting rain. People say they just don't go, or less people go. If it's projected at, plus 32 degrees and sunny, well, we get an influx. But again, it's best case scenario. At the end of the day, there is a surplus from this program, and whatever surplus is generated gets transferred into the paid
reserve.
parking revenue or reserve. And that authority comes through this council approval of this
Okay.
budget.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin. Further questions on that item? Thank you, Archana. We're now on, I think you've talked about the drinking
Number
water.
7.
Number 7, please. Thank you.
So this one is the 575,000 budgeted for fleet increases, and Councillor Graham has asked for itemizing these things. So my colleague has itemized these things. I'm not sure if you want me to read all of this, but single axle dump truck is 300,000. Heavy duty pickup trucks are 170,000, and there are some details underneath. I would request everybody to kind of read through those. Brusher head to be fitted into existing tractor with the broom arm, that would cost us $25,000. Sweeper unit to be fitted on existing wheel loader, that would be $80,000. So this has a little bit more details, but overall, this is what itemized, and this is what adds up to 575.
Thanks, Archana. Just curious, how do you account, do we trade these vehicles, or, it's just more of an information thing for me. So we've got value in them. Mr. Brooks is giving me a sign. So just kind of understanding here what happens with the old vehicles versus the new. Thank you.
Yeah, the old vehicles, they are sent to auction. And we find we do get a good amount of money for those used vehicles because they are well taken care of at auction. And that revenue from the auction goes back into the equipment reserve. So I should add, all these costs representative of the fleet are fully funded from the equipment reserve and have no tax impact.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Councillor Graham, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Brooks. Do we know who buys those vehicles? Is it other municipalities?
Typically not other municipalities. It's hard to say, make a representation of who exactly is buying these vehicles. But
We could put a tracker in them. Sorry, not to make light of the situation. I appreciate the question, Councillor Graham. Archana, I think we're on to number 8. If there are any further questions about the fleet. And number 9.
Yeah, so question 8 is answered within that question last item for 80,000. So that's what it is. Number 9, we had attached an Excel sheet, which is at the end for salaries, for the county road section and all that stuff. So I've added that at the end of this. I think it starts on page 12. So there's the detail around there. I'm hoping that I don't have to go through that, but if you want, we can certainly go through that. It's a long list of things. I'm looking for your direction, Councillor and Mayor, on this one.
Okay, are we moving to the next item? I apologize, I didn't hear
Yeah.
that last piece. Okay, thank you.
So number 10, what is the number of employees added since 2016 to 2020? I just want to say this information from 2019 was also provided on the January 16th budget deliberation by Mr. Paul Shipway. Now I have it from 2016. So you can see the permanent full-time staff has been almost consistent. In 2018, there is a little bit lower staff, and I'm not sure if I can comment on that why it would be. It was like 3 years prior to me even joining, but then it has gone up by 75 from 69 to 75. And then 2021, it was 76. Then we have added 2 positions in 2022. And now 1 more position, which is the water compliance one that we just saw for 2023. And part-time employees, we used to have only one. In 2019, 113 and 108 in 2020, 2021, it went back to 130. And I'm pretty sure you all have questions like what happened before that. So I think it's again more cleaning up. In 2019, my predecessors probably started thinking about adding this information into the FIRs. And I want to make sure that we all understand this is the information that we do provide to the province for all kinds of grants and funding that we may receive in future for different kind of works. And this is like Schedule 80 that we submit. And this information has come from that directly.
Thanks. Can I just interrupt for a sec? So, or Mr. Perrin or someone's been here. So this number 1 isn't accurate for 2018 for part-time. We've had lifeguards for, I mean,
Yeah.
they did, 30 years and stuff like that. I just wondered if it's just, I realize it's an anomaly.
I think it was just calculated differently, and you're absolutely right. And somebody started cleaning it up. And in this staff complement, I would say 108, like for example, for 2028, they were the firefighters. And then if we go back into 2022 and 23, I'm gonna talk about in next question, we had 108 firefighters, 4 recreation staff, and 1 finance staff. So 1 finance staff means we used to have half finance person before, like last year. Now we changed it to 1 full-time person. And lifeguards are including as seasonal staff, not as part-time staff.
Okay, thank you.
So that actually helps me answer the next question as well, which is our firefighter lifeguards in 113. So lifeguards are not part of that equation. So why the council salary is going down by 4,000? So the 2023 number is actually projected based on the 2023 pay grade that we received. So there is no change per se, and 2022 actuals are lower. I don't know why the actuals are just lower, and I think it could be new pay grade that has shown the decrease. So the staff does not increase or decrease the salaries of council or any staff. They are actually based on the pay grades. Why is the Celebrate C Committee, C Environment Committee, Community Policing Committee, and Heritage Committee included in council? So because they are ABCs, and they're called ABCs, which is Advisory Board and Committees, and until 2021, 2022, they were not part of council, but given that these are the council committees, and they should be aware as well as accountable for the cost of these. So we moved all these.
Archana, so they weren't, but now they are. Is that, just give me some understanding of this, please.
Yes. So earlier they were part of different expenses under general gov. So we moved them out and we moved it to council committees because these are the expenses by the council to conduct these committees. All the expenses and all the costs are related to the council, not to the general gov, like not to the staff.
Okay.
So the next question, number 14, is community policing. And you're correct, Councillor Graham. We did see the dissolve of the Port Stanley Community Policing Committee in 2022. However, we were also informed that once the new council is in place, they are hoping, and I mean, they means the municipalities are hoping that they will come up with a new Central Elgin Policing Committee, like all together, like not, I think there used to be a Belmont one, then there used to be Port Stanley, but the decision was made to consolidate them all. But they needed to dissolve everything first and then come up with a new one. And I just want to give you another tidbit around that there was about a little bit of money in their accounts that the policing committee of Port Stanley had, or treasurer actually came in, and they have deposited it with Central Elgin. So we have all the books, we have all the money. I think it was very small amount, about $3,000 or something, not much, but we have it kept as a separate under us for now. so that when this new policing committee comes in place, the Elgin, Central Elgin Community Policing Committee comes in place, we can transfer everything to them.
Thank you. If we could move to 16, please.
Sure.
We know that it's
w-
you've got $80,000, but it's 94,861. We also have a
Right.
1.25 multiple that you told us about. Is that correct when we're looking at what the savings would be from that position?
Yes.
Okay. Questions or comments on that? And then 17, you've got two positions. We talked about digital transformation,
Right.
legislative coordinator. We've gone over animal shelter costs. I believe that is St. Thomas building a new facility? Mr. Perrin?
I believe so.
That has not been confirmed by the city of St. Thomas. They put a request into the municipality of Central Elgin in 2022. At that time, wanting council to commit to the project. And however, they did not have final costs at that point. So we deferred it to budget, subject to them notifying us. And we have not received notification from the city of St. Thomas what their intentions are about building the new facility.
Mr. Perrin, if the facility isn't built, do we go back to the last year's budget, or do we know?
The capital cost for our share is not included in this budget.
Thank you. Looking at
This is
19,
based on, this is based on actual expenditures from 2022, Mayor.
thank you. 19, public facing process for bylaw complaints. Councillor Graham, was there a change to it? Just a question.
It just said that it was a new process coming in, so I just wanted a brief explanation of that.
Okay.
It was in the budget document.
Mr. Perrin?
Yeah, so we provided that as a link to the question. So as far as the public facing process, there's a page on our municipal website with respect to bylaw enforcement. There is a complaint form that is a Laserfish workflow that we utilize. So an individual with a bylaw complaint can fill out that form, and then it goes through a process as far as notification to the bylaw enforcement officer or manager of bylaw, and all their investigative notes and things like that are appended in that workflow form. So it's all starts right at the public interface when someone completes a bylaw concern request.
Thank you. We're going now to, we've talked a little bit about the parking salaries and it being casual salaries, Councillor Graham. Casual salaries for seasonal bylaw officers are being paid from paid parking revenues. I do think it's important to say that when we do have extra, Mr. Perrin, so if it doesn't, we're paying salaries from the parking, but if there's extra on top of that, that gets back into our coffers in some way, correct? Mr. Perrin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that in the interest of trying to mitigate tax impacts, property tax impacts, staff are proposing that all seasonal bylaw officers' salaries, whether they're implementing or enforcing paid parking or investigating or dealing with other bylaw complaints such as dog off leash or doing investigations with respect to property standards or lot maintenance, their time will be paid for out of the paid parking revenue. If you choose for us to go back and split that out based on what they're doing, we can absolutely do that. We're happy to do that, but that will have an impact on the number of the 3.8%.
Thank you. 22 fire salaries, that's explained. Fire insurance, we've got adjusted amounts. I'm sure that we face on all our committees the differences within insurance going up. 24, why did fire marine services parts and supplies go up? Any further comments? It's explained here. Councillor Graham, did you have any questions on that explanation? Okay, sorry. Just for 24 marine services. So I'm just going through that. We're at 24 right now.
No, that's fine. I'll get back to it.
Thank you. Parks and Trail Master Plan 25, Parks and Trails Master Plan is estimated to cost $125,000, 32,500, which will be funded from the development charges and the remainder to be funded from reserves.
Yeah, where we wanted to mention is it doesn't cost like 32,500, it actually costs 125.
Sorry, it's 125,000 for the Trails Master Plan.
Absolutely, yes, and 32.5 of which is funded from DCs
I
and
see.
remainder comes from reserves.
Okay.
So
Councillor,
900,000, sorry.
And is that for consultant fees? What is that involved?
Jeff, would you like to answer that question, please, for me?
sorry, Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, that will be to hire a consultant to prepare a recreation and trails master plan.
Thank you.
Number 26.
We're okay. Front Street noted, 27, funds and water and wastewater, we've discussed. And I think that it's probably the will of council that water and wastewater be discussed at a different time. Current and future tax money to replenish the reserve. This depends on the current and future budgets and surpluses in the direction from council. Okay. And there's some information on there, very informative to get some of these ideas. We're learning a lot today. And the good news is I think lunch has arrived. I'm told by Ms. Leach. If it's okay with the group here with council, it'll be okay for us to break for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susie, are we okay to reconvene? Yes, thank you very much, everyone online. Continuing on, does anyone else have any specific questions about the actual budget document? Just going around here looking for the ideas, opportunities, questions from council. Archana, is there anything else from your end that you'd like to go over before we proceed to next steps?
I think I've made my case, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Graves, you were going to give us we're going to start now looking a little bit into the capital budget. And if I could pass the floor to you as we look to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure that you have spent time on this in the past, so I'll keep my comments brief. I spoke earlier just about the development of capital budget and the various areas where capital projects are funded from. On your capital budget sheet, the very last column on the right-hand side are those the tax levy. That's the dollars that would impact your budget for this year. I guess I'll just suggest two things just to highlight. Again, I'm sure you're aware of this. The aerial truck replacement, so that's not showing any expenditures for this year, but approval of this would place that in the hopper so that ordering can get underway and it would be funded for within your 2024 budget. And then I know that there's been a lot of discussion about, as I understand it, about the Front Street project. And I would just comment that, depending on where council goes with that, if that project stays, then, administration could be directed to come back with a plan in terms of, the next tendering process and the timing of that and how efficiencies could be made, et cetera. At a subsequent meeting outside of where council, how they deal with that project in terms of actually funding it. So there's in terms of the total program is pretty healthy. Impact on taxation is around $3 million for the entire package. So I guess if there's any specific questions about any specific project, staff can talk to that. But I think it's laid out pretty clearly in the budget information.
Discussion, Council, Deputy Mayor Noble, please.
Through Mr. Mayor. We had a ladder truck that was damaged and then repaired, and I think it's back in service. But there was talk where that was being sold, and I'm just curious where we're at on that because I don't see it on the budget. But while I'm talking about fire, we did have some other expenditures that were on the budget for the fire, and I don't see them there now. I'm pretty sure there was some other stuff that was this year on the budget for the fire. And on top of that, I don't see a reduction in our overall tax levy increase with that stuff being taken off. If I could get clarification on.
Sure, Chief Ray, some of it might have been capital as opposed to operating, I believe. Sir?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, looking at, there is a 2023 capital, whereas CEO Graves pointed out, the aerial truck is listed on there with no expense for 2023, but there is one for 2024. The aerial truck was damaged on September 9th of 2021, sorry, shortly after I arrived here. It came back to us approximately 5 to 6 weeks ago, back into service. As of yesterday, it went back just to have some updates done to it. As we had put 100 kilometers on it, they wanted to check the vehicle over again.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. I didn't see offhand whether it's mentioned anywhere in the actual capital notes or not, but I did speak in November with Mr. Shipway about the truck that you're describing, the one that was damaged, and he said that it was anticipated that if that were sold, then that money would go toward the cost of the new aerial, which would be a size that would better perform for our community.
Thank you. I think that, any other questions, currently on capital? Deputy Mayor Noble, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, so that fire truck, the one that's back in service now, if it's sold, is it worth roughly the same amount? Because the idea is we're buying a smaller one. I think that's going to be parked in Union, I believe. Is there an offset on that cost with selling the one and buying the new one? Or are we keeping the old one?
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent was to sell that vehicle. Since its return, we have not had an appraisal done on that as to the cost effectiveness for that currently. Anticipating that a general anticipation would be we would probably get $500,000 for that. It was built in 2014. We're approaching 2024 as of next year. Fire trucks will run a service of 20 years, at which time then your insurance rates begin to escalate because the truck is considered by fire underwriters not to be a valid fire truck for frontline service. With the placement in Union, that would be so the intent was to dispose of that truck for a smaller truck, a 100-foot ladder truck without the platform. Our current truck has a platform body on it. It's also a tandem axle. The intent is to replace that with just a straight ladder on a single axle chassis, which would be more viable for the village of Port Stanley because of the tight streets. Whether or not it would go into Union would be dependent upon the size. The Union Fire Hall at this point in time is not appropriate to accept that size of a vehicle. That's why once the Port Stanley station was finally completed, that aerial is now sitting within Port Stanley.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Connors, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Omrod, like what we do with the vehicles and the selling of vehicles at auction, the $500,000 you're talking about, whether it's, whatever number it is, it goes back into the reserves. Is that the way it works?
Chief.
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Thank you. Questions or comments? We talked a little bit about here on the page, where is it, in the February 16th report to Council, Archana, we've got in here some suggestions for present the following considerations of Council. We're looking for nominally higher risks to be incorporated in the 2023 budget. Did you want to speak to those changes that are being suggested, please?
Sure, I can do that. So disclaimer here first. So this was also in February. Some of the things may change. For example, hanging baskets. Now we are at a point where I'm just giving you an example before I dig in deep. We are at a place where the contracts are already being signed off and we haven't provided any direction to them not to do that. So that kind of changes will not be anymore kind of viable. And that's why I did not include it in the March 20th report. So, but I'll go through the whole thing and I'll share that with you.
Sorry, Archana, what was the cost for the flowers?
I'll go through the whole thing. It
16 or
is listed there. Yeah,
Is it?
something like
Okay.
that. But I'll just share the whole, I'll go through the whole stuff, but just mentioning as a disclaimer that some things may not be, as we said in February, they will be.
Just curious, because if things are over 50, don't they come to Council? Just curious.
Yes, they do, but these are kind of a regular operational thing every year that happens. So I don't believe that they come, anything new would come, but I think there is a bylaw or something for that. Jeff, can you please speak?
Mr. Brooks?
The hanging baskets is an operational item built of the flowers and the baskets, which are quoted. As per the procurement bylaw, the cost does not require a tender to be approved by council. And the whole hanging basket program is made up of that cost as well as staff and equipment charges.
Thank you. Archana,
Okay.
if you want to
Yep.
continue on with that
Absolutely.
understanding.
So I'm going on page. It starts on page 3. And the first one is county roads. This one is where we just talked about previously that there is $100,000 dollar value that we are seeing, and that was due to the mild 2022 winter. So these can go, this amount can actually go back to the county road reserve fund. So this can be used by at the direction of council for other things, for example, county lift bridge to manage that pressure that we have 431,000 now. And I would want to ask Jeff before I say this, because we had a mild winter until March, but March was not very crazy and onward. So I'm not sure if it's still at 100,000 as of the date. Jeff, do you want to comment on that?
Mr. Brooks?
We have had, more events over the past month and a half. But I can't speak to, where we're at right now as far as where that $100,000 is.
And I'll have that number for you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted my confirmation of my comment from Mr. Brooks, because there has been a change, and I will provide you the final number by April 15th, because we are pretty much at the final stages.
Thank
And
you.
it will obviously offset the tax rate if council's wish would be that. The next item is building services. So we have been talking about there is a transfer of portion of administration office lease from general government to building services. So that's about 10,000. This is basically, it's funded from permit fees. This is not a tax levy, but this is also where we can use it for the administrative office lease. So that will also decrease a little bit of the tax levy. Taxation, increase supplemental taxation revenue. So we think that if housing starts and the development slows down, it may not be as we thought it would be last year. And especially with the fall economic statement, we may get into deficit of $50,000. And with all the bills and everything coming down the road for us through the province, there would be, we are expecting there could be a deficit of $50,000 in that. Fire services, we can reduce the maintenance budget for the 16 fire fleet apparatus. This is potentially backstopped by a fire fleet reserve, so we can use $50,000 there. And if you need more detail, my colleague Ray can speak to that. Fire capital, next item. So eliminate capital items FD04 and FD05. I just need to confirm what those items are. Sorry, my bad here. So I'm looking at the budget document, and the capital cost sheets has that detail. I'm just looking at that, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor, those two capital projects listed are an e-combi tool for the Yarmouth Center Station. Item number Fire Department -04 at $10,000, and fire apparatus electronic devices, Fire Department -05 at $12,000. They're iPads for the installation within the fire trucks for the firefighters to be able to get directions and complete reports. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Next item is bylaw enforcement. So fund from parking revenue making this service for a levy net zero, that is 70,000. So we just talked about that as well. So that's what where we lead to. So these are the few items that we had said that we may be able to consider.
Okay.
But
Thank you, Archana. Mr. Graves?
Ashana, just so I'm clear, and maybe so all of council is clear, so in your March the 20th memo, the last line where it says that we're sitting at a 3.76% as we
Right.
move in here today. Am I correct in saying that none of those figures from that February have been taken into account and applied against that 3.76 at this point in time? Because
absolutely, yes,
there's been no direction from council to do so. So
correct.
there's some movement there if council so wishes to do so, to apply against the 3.76.
That is correct.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Graves?
Well, I know this is kind of, now we're going to move, we've kind of, if I can interpret where we're at, we've kind of gone through kind of a recap of information stage in terms of where we're at with the budget. And, you know, again, not sound like a broken record, but it's sitting at 3.76%. I don't know if that's palatable for council or not. If not, then I would suggest, your worship, that you just simply go through each one of those items that have been suggested by council or by staff and give direction. I'm going back to that February the 16th to see if those are things that council was prepared to move on. And then we'll go through that list and see what the numbers look like at the end of that list, and where the comfort level is at that point in time. That seems like a reasonable approach to me.
Thanks, Mr. Graves. Is that a will of council to proceed as such? Thank you. Archana, if you want to take us through, or?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a Excel sheet, and my manager of finance is also online. I'm just gonna add, so which one would you like me to kind of add? For example, the $10,000, sorry, the 100,000 one, that would be the one that would make a impact on tax levy, right? So if you would want to give me direction and say, let's see if that makes a direction that would decrease it by 100,000, and I can provide you what the next rate looks like after implementing this.
Oh, yeah, I think we'd like to go through all of them and then have the cumulative, if that's fine. Is that fair?
Yep, absolutely. So 100,000 is one. The other one could be building services. Then basically we will not use the tax levy, but we'll use the administration office lease fee there, and that would impact the levy again in a different manner. And then the maintenance services for the fire, capital for fire, 25,000, sorry, 50,000 and 22,000, and then bylaw enforcement, 70,000. But again, I want to just say, with a significant number of Port Stanley capital projects, on the horizon, this may leave a deficit. So you may not want to consider this one at this point, but again, your wish, if you want to go ahead, and then we'll see what happens next. Do you have your direction to kind of try to see if we can all put that together and see where the rate sits?
Yes.
Okay. So give me 2 minutes and I'll be back with that number for you.
And this is on the list here. We're not just doing one-offs, are we?
No, this is on the list. These are the ones I will, so right now we have 3.7. None of these have been implemented in that. I just need to take this number, put it into that file that we have, and give you what the tax levy would look like.
Thank you.
So give me a couple of minutes and I'll be back. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm back here.
Thank you.
It would bring us down to 1.93%, the tax rate, and the amount would be $17,340,951. So from 3.7 down to 1.93.
Okay.
If I have the direction to implement all of this.
Okay. Questions or comments, council? Councillor, oh, I didn't see who was first. So Councillor Halpin, then Deputy Mayor Noble, please.
So then, thank you through you, Mayor Sloan. Would it be appropriate for us to look at these and examine the potential consequences of them before we go ahead and approve all of them? Because one, for example, is potentially reducing the amount of service to our fire fleet vehicles, right? So some of these things we might want to examine.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Deputy Mayor Noble.
I was just looking for clarification from Archana about that whole process. I feel like I missed some of it.
Okay, Archana, question from Deputy Mayor Noble.
Yeah, so to you, Mayor Sloan, Deputy Mayor Noble, what happens is that these are the potentials we have where we can make some adjustments, and we know, for example, but there was a disclaimer that I made, for example, for 100,000. In February, we knew we had 100,000, but we may be at 80,000 right now. But if I get the direction from council to look into it and kind of go with this, the numbers that we currently have, we will put that together. And as I said, April 15th is my deadline to provide all the numbers. I'll have every number for you, and I will provide that correct information and say, come back to the council and say, this is where we're at, and this is what the date would look like. Does that make sense to you, Deputy Mayor Noble?
Yes, thank you. I believe that the community would truly appreciate us looking deeply into the budget and getting as close to a zero budget as we could. I realize it's a tough ask, and we've had huge increases in costs, but so is our community. And I truly worry about young families and seniors with tight budgets and the cost restraints that they're already facing with increased costs, and in a lot of cases, not an increase in income for these households. So it's really important that we for sure look very hard at this budget to do the best we can for our community.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Noble. And if I'll jump in, thank you, Archana. We're seeing some light in the tunnel. I appreciate that. I appreciate the work that everyone's doing. I noticed in the federal government budget that they did a 3% across the board reduction in spend. You know, like Deputy Mayor Noble, I hear things like the $20,000 for conferences and wonder how that's something that in a tight year is justified as an increase. We have building that's down and is a concern. You know, from the private sector, and that's a lot of us came here with new ideas and from a different background, education, industry, agricultural. The questions that come to mind looking at this budget, I ask about, you know, what about attrition? What are the savings potential for attrition in 2023? Do we have a comprehensive strategy with respect to staffing and costs of staffing, which, as we know, is approximately $9 million? I also look at this important undertaking and wonder about at some point us having a budget committee, so that when we get not only to know each other and our backgrounds and how, as Archana said, when she started, she had to get her head around some of these big files. And I think that's what we're doing today, and look forward to continuing that. So those are my comments. I mean, I will say that sometimes with budgeting, and to Councillor Halpin's comment, you know, are there some ramifications to decisions we make? I've had budgets delivered where there's an option one, you know, not to upset Councillor Bachman, but maybe option one was 0, option 2 was 2, option 3 was 3.8, and then that discussion ensues. So happy to have those healthy and important conversations. But I appreciate where we're getting, and as a team, you know, learning and hopefully growing. So those are my comments, and look forward to hearing from others.
May I interrupt, Mr. Mayor? If,
Absolutely.
I could, please? So, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that I would like to also include is that, how we were talking about service levels, right? So the council could consider looking at, because we do surveys and we have service levels and all that stuff that we have, and including, like, for example, I had this hanging basket as an example. I'm happy to provide you a list of those things which you could consider if you may, but the direction will come from you to reduce those service levels. So I could put something together for you which could help you decrease a little bit further down, but it will. So I'm going to be pessimistic here. It will be very hard to get to 0%, but you could come close to 1.25 or 1.5, depending upon how would the council altogether feel by cutting the service levels.
Thank you very much. Councillor Halpin, I see your hand.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. I do think it's important that we finish this budget at some point, and it looks like we have a good list of suggestions already here for things that we could do to cut the budget. I know that you and Deputy Mayor Noble were both comfortable with a budget that was higher than this, even without any changes made to it in Elgin County. So I'm sure that if we go through the items that exist for us and consider which of these are strong options, we should be able to do something reasonable here today.
Thanks, Councillor Halpin. There's quite a bit of difference between Elgin County and the budget here, but I'm happy to hear from those about next steps. For me, it's important, we're to hear back from Archana, who's, I think, just on that last piece, was going to get us some more information, that there is an information timeline about more information that's been requested. So I'm not sure about making the decision right here, but I'm happy to continue on to formulate a timeline, if you will, to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row and that everything can move along. Deputy Mayor Noble, and then maybe Councillor Bachman, getting a quizzical look.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Archana, I truly appreciate the concept of you looking at the budget and giving us a list of wants that we can pick and choose through to maybe bring the budget down. I think that's kind of what you're thinking. I realize we have our needs. We have service levels that we have to look at. And if we have some of those things that are like a want, say like flower baskets and that, depending on the community, some of that stuff can maybe be donated at some level, or there might be an option for that. But I truly think it's important for the folks that are on a very tight budget that we really look at this budget and control the increases that we have. It truly would be appreciated in the community.
So in return, Deputy Mayor Noble and every council member, I will provide you everything that I can support, but in return, I would really appreciate if we can move through the budget and help my team to not get too much under pressure for the taxes deadlines, because it was very hard for me and Mr. Paul Shipway to bring it back to a place, the municipality, that we started meeting deadlines. Like, for example, the FIR was submitted last year for first time in 20 years on timely basis. So I need your support to do those things on a timely manner. I don't want this council to be considered as a roadblocker or something where we bring this municipality back to square one, where it was 2 years ago. So I need your commitment. I need your support to continue to work with you all and continue to meet the deadlines that province has set up, and we continue to move and look good in everybody's eyes. I need that commitment from you guys so that we don't miss any deadlines.
Thank you, Archana. I think I have let me go to Councillor Bachman and then supplementary from Deputy Mayor Noble. Thank you.
Not to belittle any people's hardships in our community, but we're approaching paralysis through analysis at this point. We need to get some action taken. We have contracts that are due. We have tenders that are due. We have a tax base, according to Mr. Graves, that requires notification in order to get their tax bills. We're coming under the gun here, people. Like, we're getting to a point where we can't postpone much anymore. We really can't. I think we need to make some decisions. They need to be hard decisions. If we've got this down to the 1.5 to 2% and giving up some services and some reserve funds that I think are going to be necessary next year, we're looking at increases next year because we're postponing and using reserve funds from this year. So whether or not we save people a 0.2%, by the way, I'm a Central Elgin resident and I appreciate that too. I mean, I'm not here to take money out of my own pocket. But we're looking at doing what's best for our residents based on the needs and fiscally responsible. And I think other than sending our Chana and our staff back to the drawing board with a 0% increase, which we never directed, again, I'm going to repeat that, we've never given them direction for that. We need to take what we have, make some decisions and move on for the benefit of our Central Elgin residents.
Thank you, Councillor Bachman. I would say that I think as a new council, we were looking, as Archana says, to do our due diligence, to do the requisite deliberations, to make sure that we had all the information required. I think that next year, we'll obviously have had more time together and able to come across with knowing some of the items, knowing some of the issues. And for me, it's been a learning experience, learning about the budget process municipally, and I think it's a valid one. Did you have a supplementary before I go to this side of the table?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Archana, I look forward to and I'm excited to work with you on that needs and wants list. Thank you.
Councillor Graham, then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Archana. I think I reiterate or I reinforce what Ms. Deputy Mayor Noble said. I would like to see that additional list of things that you potentially could look at to slash that. And then as soon as we get that, we could move forward as quickly as possible within a week or two of having another budget meeting, going over those, seeing how they fit within the budget, what that takes us down to and where we're at to make us make sure that we're doing our due diligence and doing the best that we can to deliver on our election promises. I appreciate that, Archana.
And
Thank you, Councillor.
thank you, everyone.
Sorry, Archana, just 1 second. Can I just have Councillor Halpin, please?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Mayor Sloan. I'd like to speak to that question of due diligence here. And I'd like to point out that we have all had possession of this document since November 2nd. And that means that we've all had time to read it. We've all had time and opportunity to call, to email, to do whatever we needed to do to get answers to these questions. And as far as I can tell, exceedingly little effort has been taken on that. It was on less than 24 hours notice before our first meeting in January that members of council complained that they needed a hard copy of this. And it was on less than 24 hours notice again that we received this long list of questions that Archana has been really generous in supplying to us today. I think that if we're going to speak honestly and frankly about due diligence, we have to acknowledge that we're all saying we need more time, but it's because we're choosing not to use that time. And if there are people here that want to save money for the community, who are taking a paycheck from the community every month and who are not doing this reading, you could save 0.25% on the taxes for each of those people that chose to donate that money back.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Watson, please. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Part of our tax levy was for that Front Street, 2.1 million capital. Okay, so is there some of that going to be in reserves now? Are we going to be up to $4 million in reserves? I just want to make sure we have money set aside for that program. Thanks.
Archana, please.
So I'm not sure if I have the direction from the council to actually stop the project and put it into the reserves. I don't believe I've seen that direction coming through yet. Unless it came through when I was away. So I might have missed on it, but I haven't seen any direction that this project is not going forward. But yes, if this would be the direction, then yes, that money would go back to the reserve, what we were trying to use this year.
Thank you. Mr. Graves, did you have a comment, sir?
Maybe just two to Councillor's comment. So as it stands right now, nothing has changed on the capital budget in terms of the Front Street thing. So it's still a go ahead with the monies from the reserve and some grants and then some new tax levy. So that's still whole. What I would recommend, Mr. Mayor, is Archana has presented that list from the March document. I think it's really important that, you know, that council at least signal concretely whether you are willing to accept those individual items so that as she begins looking at the next phase of some other things, then we're not going back and looking at that list again. Unless council needs more information on that, I think you should go through that list and say, yes, 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 no. And I understand there might be a couple of modifications to some of those numbers, but then we don't have to come back to that list. And then if our Chana team can develop yet another little list of some service things, then you got the next starting point, having dealt with the list from March. That's how I would see it. So.
Thank you for that. Very helpful. Councillor Connors, please.
Yes, your list, our China works out to about somewhere around $250,000 and drops our increase to 1.93.
That's
One of the
correct.
things I'd like to talk about, or I'd like to have us talk about, to your point, Mr. Graves, is the capital budget. And I understand this doesn't really affect the capital budget too much. And I wonder, by going through the capital budget, can we find cost savings there that might offset one or two of these items that we may not want to take a discount on? So going back to what Mayor Sloan said about having a list A and a list B, and it doesn't, I mean, I realize that it's more efficient if we do it the way Mr. Graves has described, but I'd like to see that, you know what, for instance, let's just take the first item for $100,000 savings. Well, maybe we can make that up in the capital budget somewhere and retain this. I don't know, but I'd kind of like to see it done, structured that way, if possible.
Thank you, Councillor Connors. Archana, comment, please.
So yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't present it that way. I can present it to the options. So for example, this 100,000 that could only go to county roads or the county lift bridge. I can't use this for anything else. So I can't really make that decision for you guys. You have to give me the direction that these are the items you can delete, or yes, you can implement that. I will implement them, and then I'll bring like things to you back saying this is what the impact is. Like I gave you an overall number, and we cannot use the money that is in one bucket to another, offset another thing or something like that. So it will be like, okay, this project, for example, if you give me the direction saying we are not doing the Front Street project and that 2 million, I cannot say that it will go somewhere else. It will go into the reserve for the Front Street. I hope that makes sense to you all. Like, I need direction to do anything, as Mr. Graves said. And I actually have that list right now that I can share with my screen with you all that I'm talking about, but I need to update, for example, the buckets I was talking about, the hanging baskets. And now we are already in the contract. It was about 56,000 we could have eliminated if this meeting was, or this discussion was held in February, because we were not in the contract at that point. So these are the kind of things. So these directions, and one more important thing is that your definition, council's definition of wants and needs, right? They may be different from what the residents believe are the wants and needs. And
Sorry, Archana, understood. Just Councillor
you.
Connor, was your question answered with respect to what you're looking for? I just want to make sure.
Yes, she's basically told me by what I've got here that she can't do what I'm asking to do. Like, in other words, trade one off against the other one. So, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin.
Maybe if I could take a stab at Councillor Connor's comment with respect to capital. So as I understood the question, what was that is the potential of reducing capital expenditure to help get down to a lower percentage increase to the budget. Is that correct? Okay. So based on that, absolutely understand that question. I'm in a position of speaking truth to power now. So please bear with me a little bit. We would caution council with that approach, because on the capital side, you have, and we forwarded an email, I believe, 2 weeks ago to council with all the asset management plans that have already been approved by the previous council. Whether they were approved by the previous council or this council, the reality is the facts are the facts, and the value of the assets and the condition of them are factual. When you cut capital, you effectively actually compromise the integrity of your asset pool. And a prime example of that is what this council and previous councils faced that is a very hot button topic in the community, and that's water rates. Because for generations previously, and I know I sound like a broken record, so I apologize for that. But just give me that indulgence in that was a generational situation that occurred that required a large capital investment over a short period of time with no money in the bank. So while you can cut capital, that will have an impact on future generations, as well as future financial situations, and realizing, and recognizing Councillor Graham's comment that, she was elected based on the premise of being financially responsible. Staff would suggest that financially responsible looks at long-term planning and maintenance of your core assets that are here for the use and service to the public. So, to reduce expenditure in a short period of time could have significant impacts on the condition of those assets going forward, because every single day that those assets are in use, they degrade. And they degrade on different levels based on traffic, based on weather conditions. 3-5 days of rain or a significant spring breakup can have a huge effect on the condition of your asset classes, for example, roads, and could impact your level of expenditure going forward. So while it's very easy to get to a certain number that council may want by cutting capital, that's the one that will have the biggest impact on residents going forward.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Connors, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Lloyd, I view the capital budget as a bit of a, for lack of a better description, a bit of a wish list of things that you need to get, and you've recommended that we get because of the research you've done, but it is a bit of a wish list. And is there any possibility to take some of this stuff out of capital this year and push it next year? That's kind of what I was referring to trade off, one of these other items.
If I may, just before Mr. Perrin, can I defer, or before Mr. Perrin, Mr. Graves, then Mr. Perrin. Thank you.
I just want to add a little bit of conceptual comments to where you're going, which is so valid. And every municipality across the province would go through this same thing about where can we reduce on the capital side. The challenge is that, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, that not all of your capital asset documents have been completed yet. And one day you're going to have an aggregate amount of dollars that probably would say that you should be spending at a minimum, I'm just being a little bit fictitious here, twice the amount of tax-based dollars in your capital budget just to keep up with your asset management, those degrading assets. Like every municipality has a deficit in how much money they spend on their capital program. And every municipality is trying to inch forward to put a little bit more in that capital side to help manage the capital side, which is really important. And it's always a struggle every year at budget time in terms of that balancing of what you're getting at, that balancing, but it's really important. The other thing that I'll just mention somewhat anecdotally, but the win comes on the capital side when we have senior levels of government that say that they've got a grant program, an infrastructure grant program, or something that we can draw in some good cash from to help with some of these capital projects. And many times some benchmark information that you have to prove that you're worthy of those grants is where your asset management plan is and where it fits in. So you may win or you may lose on the weight of where your asset management plans are and how much you're investing in your asset management. So it's a bit of a vicious circle, but asset management to municipalities across the province is crucial. And it's really tough to sort of have to erode your capital program to manage your asset management. When, as I said, every municipality across the province is not even close to being able to fund what they need in the way of asset management.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Mr. Perrin.
to add to Mr. Graves's point, there's a number of things that are interconnected. So back to his comment about, when we apply for grants, the province looks at where we sit in asset management. They look at, when I say asset management, do we have plans in place? Are we following those plans? And can we say that, from a municipality, that we're maintaining the overall condition of the assets? That's what they look at. What they are what the province is trying to get away from is rewarding bad behavior. They're trying to get away from giving grant money to municipalities that don't have their own financial house in order. Because for those that do, they're saying, we'll reward you because this can help you. But if you choose not to spend any money on capital, well, you have the ability to raise revenue on taxation or user fees, or whatever. The other thing it affects is that, and the province has taken this approach with the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. So Ontario Municipal Partnership funding, which is an unconditional grant, is tied to your level of service and your asset management, and for municipalities to show that they're complying with regulation 588-17. So, respectfully, Councillor Connor, when we come as staff and with a capital program, it's not a wish list. It is based on fact. It's based on work that internal municipal staff does on a daily basis. We inspect our assets just by, doing road patrols or exercising valves. We have third-party work that has to be done statutorily. The Ontario Bridge Code dictates that every structure, whether it's a bridge or a culvert, 3 meters in diameter or greater, has to be inspected and signed off by 2 engineers every 2 years. So we take all that information, we evaluate the condition of the assets. We also look at what the depreciated value of those assets are and what we should be funding, and that's all laid out within the asset management plans for each one of those assets. So, case in point, bridges and structures. We never had a dedicated funding envelope for bridges and structures. We've tried to deal with that through our tax supported roads program. The asset management plans is just based on the need. Over the next 10 years, we should be funding this municipality $485,000 every year into a bridge program, whether we spend that money or not. If we don't have a need, then that money should go into a reserve fund so that when we do have a need in 2 years and we have to spend $800,000, we have $485,000 from a contribution this year and the remainder from a subsequent year. And what that does by funding those envelopes and those reserve funds, it levels out the tax impact to the residents of Central Elgin. It's more consistent. We're not budgeting for a huge capital project this year, nothing next year, then tax rates drop. And back to Deputy Mayor Noble's comment, for residents, there is a benefit to have some financial security about what the tax bill is going to be that I have to pay every year, that it's not ups and downs. There's some consistency there. But from a long-term financial viability, every municipality is striving to fund their capital program, and progressive municipalities, and I like to say I'm proud to be part of one. Those programs are supported by master plans like Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Trails Master Plan that are filled with public consultation, and council will adopt them. And then a program, capital investment program that's laid out, road need studies where we evaluate the condition. We have third parties come in and evaluate the condition, and those inform those asset management plans. So it's not throwing a dart at a dartboard. It's not, what we would love to have as staff. As staff, our job would be really easy if we came in at 0% every year and no capital program.
And if I may, Mr. Perrin, your pride comes through. And I think more than, you talk about, if I may, I think the wish is we could do more and we don't have the funds available. Infrastructure is an investment. I realize that. I think maybe what we're learning today, if I may paraphrase a little, is how do we prioritize? And I know that's not easy, but, to you and Mr. Graves, I know you've been doing this for a long time. I feel learning from you about it. I realize it's not simple. I realize there's a lot for us to learn on that. So, I differentiate obviously between operating and infrastructure capital, because as I say, that's an investment. But I just wanted to say, I think the prioritizing is something we'll learn about how that's done and to our benefit. But I do appreciate your, as you said, your pride and both of you as public servants, ensuring that we have the requisite assets for the communities in which we live. Thank you. Councillor Connor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is an education process for me. I've been involved in budgeting for branch offices, et cetera, in the back, but I've never been involved in budgeting for a municipality. So this is a learning curve for me, and the information that you have put forward and the information, Lloyd, you've put forward helps me. One last question. I understand there's certain commitments by listing that we have to do each year. Is there any commitment is there any way to differentiate maybe in a list for next year's budget and the year after that this is what our capital budget is and it has to be, these are the options? Is there something that we could do that way in the future?
I have Mr. Graves and Mr. Perrin. Mr. Perrin first, please. Mr. Graves after.
Through you, Mayor Sloan. So yes, we can absolutely do that. Staff absolutely recognize that it's not an endless pot of money. We absolutely understand that. The capital programs that staff will bring forward and have brought forward are based on spending the right amount of money at the right time on the right asset to maximize, and this is a generally accepted business practice, public and private, based on return on investment, right? So with a limited amount of money. So if council wanted to reduce the capital spend, wouldn't recommend that. But if council did, you may not necessarily like how that turns out, because as staff, we're going to be going, okay, so based on the best return on investment, that road that is an absolute nightmare, full of potholes, everyone hates driving on it. Guess what? That one's going to stay there like that for a long time, because for us to rebuild, we'll say that block of road may cost $1.5 million. Well, $1.5 million, I'm using round numbers. We could take that same money and do a resurfacing project on 4 kilometers of road that is at the stage in its life cycle that if we don't do something with that hot mix, that road, then we will now end up with 5 kilometers of road like the one that's the nightmare. So as an analogy, think of it as the roof on your house. You have the choices to replace the shingles on the roof of your house, and it might cost you $10,000. But if you choose not to do that and you wait 2 years, well, guess what? Now you're into insulation that's wet, potential sheeting that's wet, drywall because repairs on the ceiling, and it costs more. Where you would have been based on a return on investment, better to spend the $10,000 for the roof on the house. So those are the types of things that staff put through our heads, and then throw in another level of complication to it is that, our road system, for example, well, it has all kinds of other infrastructure under it: storm sewers, sanitary sewers, water mains. So we have to look at the total asset network for all the asset classes that are out there, and try to come up with a plan whereby, and we hear it all the time, it's out there in the public. Thankful that Central Elgin hasn't been in this position in the last 25 years, but that a municipality goes in and rebuilds a street, and then 3 years later they come in and dig it up to replace the water main. Well, that, to me, that's mismanagement, and that's why staff look at our asset plans and our capital programs so we don't get into that situation, to maximize the return on our investment.
Thank you. Mr. Graves?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate and sympathize with the fact that many terms that are used in this municipal business are a little bit different in their concepts and their, it takes a bit of time to get familiar with them. And I just simply want to say that, part of my little mandate for the next couple of months while I'm here is that, that we would arrange a number of little technical workshops with council. And I would put sort of this asset management stuff in one of those buckets because, in a half an hour just dedicated to those kind of topics, you're going to learn a lot and see how all those pieces come together. And I think that would be helpful. So I just want to mention that, and we'll put that on the radar screen.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, Deputy Mayor Noble, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with what Mr. Perrin said, I honestly think it'd be beneficial if some of council had the opportunity maybe for maybe a tour of some of our assets so that we have an understanding of some of them, and then when they're coming due for repairs and a little bit more of that insight would be beneficial.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. I believe that during our orientation in November, Mr. Shipway did suggest that, and better late than never, I suppose. But meanwhile, I think that we should probably take it on conversation with our staff so that we can move our budget forward and plan that so that we're better armed next time.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, please. Excuse me.
Archana, sorry, I just wanted to clarify one point. Did you say that we couldn't reduce the flowers, the 56,000 flowers and put that onto perhaps the BIA because the contract has already been signed? Just wanted to clarify that.
Sorry, I didn't mean that we couldn't put into BIA. I meant that we could not take it out for, use it for the tax levy reduction anymore because the contracts are coming in place. So remember, Councillor Graham, that BIA budget is already in place. So 56,000, I'm not sure the board had already kind of approved it. So how would that be going to BIA? I'm not sure if I understand that. Sorry about that.
So that's okay. And I'm not sure I understood you either. So let's just start over again. So you're saying that $56,000 for flowers within the municipality cannot be, let's take the BIA right out of it, cannot be slashed?
At this point, because this was a proposal earlier in the year, but now we are at the place where we are already contracting and signing that stuff because remember, flowers don't come out right away, right? And I'll have my colleague Jeff speak to it a little bit more.
Thanks,
Jeff,
Mr. Brooks.
over to you.
Sure.
Councillor
So-
Graham, your microphone, please.
So as the year progresses here, staff, are obligated to continue on with the level of service that has been established over the last several years, including the hanging basket program. So in order to get the flowers and the pots, we have to make that order in January. So that order has been made, yes. So that order has been made. We've hired students to carry out that service because we need to have students. We can't, all of a sudden try and hire students in June to, water the hanging baskets. So we've proceeded to the point where there's very little opportunity for savings with that program. Moving forward into 2024, assuming that we might be able to get to a budget earlier or late in 2023, we will have that option.
Thanks, Mr. Brooks. So I think just want to ask here, Archana, is that okay? Any questions right now? So we're going to give, I think, direction here that these recommendations from Archana be investigated, plus 2 or 3 others that are on the agenda. And I know it's important for us to have a bit of a timeline here. So Archana, if we did that today, if we got that, go ahead and thank you for providing these options and coming back to us with a bit of an update. I just wanted to ask if it was okay with everyone, if perhaps we could add that to our meeting of the 24th, which would be April 24th, and then we could probably at that point have a final. Does anyone have any comments, please? Councillor Halpin, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. Are you proposing that we add budget to a regular meeting of council?
I was just saying because we were already meeting and if it was just to finalize it, that was what it was. So is that something that's not done? You'll have to inform me. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. If we're intending to have it brought back in order to finalize it, then we would need to make sure that all of the directions that we give today are the things that we pretty certainly believe we intend to finalize. So I think sending all of these things without discussing which of them we're comfortable with and which we're not would just make it into an hours-long discussion after a regular meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Helping. Councillor Graham, please.
I think we had decided that we were going to discuss these and decide right now which ones we're comfortable moving forward with. But I would recommend that potentially we look at, depending on when Archana, you and your team can get that additional set of areas that we may be able to reduce on. If you could get that to this, that we could potentially be having another budget meeting the week of the 17th of April. So as
if I
not to
may-
include, so as not to include it in the regular council meeting.
So if I may, Mayor Sloan, we are at
Yes, please.
1:35 PM. I do have that list with me. If you allow me, I can share that list with you right now. Then I can send it by email. And there will be a disclaimer because of this basket kind of thing. But there would be disclaimer for that kind of stuff. But other than that, I think the list is pretty solid. I can share my screen and I can go line by line. That would give you another view of things. And if we implemented all of that stuff, that would further reduce your budget. But then you can provide me at the end of this meeting, you can provide me the direction, Archana, go ahead, do this, do that. And maybe you all can meet for 15-20 minutes to discuss that as well before we end today. That's my proposal, but I'll leave it to you to decide what you want to do.
So I think what we're doing is that we're okay with the decisions that you've suggested. Is that okay with the group?
I'm talking about the additional list.
Okay,
Mr.
just
Mayor.
1 second, please. Sorry, just 1 second. Councillor Graham, please.
So I'm just looking at the fire capital ones and I'm wondering, I'm wondering about some of those things. So instead of, I'm wondering about moving some things around and also, that I'm looking at all three, the fire apparatus electronics device, as well as the e-combi tool in the drying rack versus the UTV response vehicle. And my question is, Chief Omerod, if we continue to use the current response vehicle instead of spending the $45,000 from reserves, that we remove perhaps the drying rack and the fire apparatus, electronic devices, and use the reserves to buy the RAM tool instead, that it would actually reduce by $36,000.
Mr. Mayor, yes,
Chief.
you are correct. It would reduce the capital budget by $36,000 for the fire service.
Okay. So just back to, I think what we're looking at here, if it's the will of council, is that we've got a list that's here. Plus, we're going to have Archana provide some others, and then we will look at the budget again. Is that the will of council? Okay, we're making great progress today. Sorry, Councillor Bachman, I apologize. I didn't see your hand.
I believe Archana said you could share that list with us right now, could you not?
Yes,
Archana?
I can. Yes, I can.
Can we take a look at that now?
Just
Would
looking
that
at
not
time.
be
We have,
expeditious?
no, it's just that 2 o'clock is coming along. What's the will of council? Is it to continue on today, or what would you folks like to do?
I'd like to see the list.
Okay. You have a list, Archana, is what you were saying?
Yes, I can share the screen if you allow me to do so.
Okay,
And this will include all my listing that I provided before and few more things. But again, it will reduce the level of services and everything. But that would be, again, decision of council and direction. Susie, can I share my screen here? Yes, I can. Thank you. Let me know if you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Thank you. So these are the 2023 budget level of service consideration. The taxation we talked about, I won't go through the detail because we talked about few things already. So, but these are the items we are talking here. Bylaw enforcement, 70,000. Building services, 10,000. These are exactly the same that were in February 16th report that I provided. Then the fire equipment, 40,000, fleet transfer, 50,000, fire capital, 22,000. So I think the additional one that you're seeing here is fleet contribution to reserves. And on the side, you will see the comments from the staff members that is basically telling what are the impacts. This will be totaling to $242,804. So what it means is also that the budget is not prepared to include all the consideration, but is prepared to with a moderate risk, right? So I just want to make sure that we understand that, because in 2021, our surplus was only $1,000. So we have to kind of make sure, and our reserves are going down, as we have mentioned it previously as well. But again, at the will of the council, we'll make those decisions. Fire and emergency services, this will be tiered response call for the medical calls. This could be $10,000. So this could be reduction in honorarium for calls. So we could reduce that cost, and less fuel cost and maintenance cost. It could be less reduced by like $10,000. Fire and emergency services, again, $10,000. This is reduction in, this can be achieved by a reduction in training and equipment cost, elimination of high angle and confined space terms, that kind of stuff. So a little bit more technical. And this will result in delay of rescue and cost borne upon the individual or company or the ratepayer. So just those some comments. Parks, seas hanging baskets program. So I think this particular ship has sailed, so we won't consider this one. Parks sees participation in Blue Flag Beach program. So we are a certified kind of designated Blue Flag Beach. We could excuse ourselves from that program and save $4,000. Next one is park elimination provision of portable washrooms in the municipality. That would cost us about $55,000. So portable washrooms are utilized at different places. Elimination of washroom may create negative experience for park users, but this is again a service level that is there and it could be reduced. Waste management. So eliminate the spring and fall leaf and yard waste program. So currently, municipality through an agreement has access to St. Thomas Community Recycling Center, where yard waste and brush can be deposited free of charge for up to 5 bags and visits. This may not be accommodating to those persons, who have the accessibility issues, but others people could actually go and, and dump it there. So municipality.
Sorry, pardon me. Go ahead.
May experience a slightly higher annual fee from St. Thomas, but that would be, again, this would save us $35,000. So this would add up to $170,000 and the total would be $412,000 and sorry, $412,804, which can be reduced by reducing these service levels. Minus
So just on
56,000.
that, Archana, sorry, but we talk about service levels and actual service. So that's requiring that we don't pick up lawn waste. We don't pick up that kind of stuff. We don't
Right.
have the fellows go. So that's a little different, I think, than what we had in the other column, which wasn't really as profound. So I know that there's going to be some push and pull on this. And what I'd like to do is to get a better understanding. If we've got the number that's coming from these options, these ones need further consideration. I'm not willing
Absolutely,
to.
yes.
Okay. So we've got those ideas. I think going forward, we have to figure out about another budget meeting. Does anyone have any thoughts for timing of that? Sorry, Councillor Bachman.
Soon.
Okay, sir. What about next week, Councillor Bachman? Let's next week. Councillors, evening of Thursday, the 13th, does everyone have availability at our usual time of, let's say, 7 for a meeting or a Zoom meeting, or does it? Thank you, Councillor Noble. Councillor Graham? 7 PM, if that's okay. And does that give, Ms. Leach, does that give you the requisite amount of time? Okay. Other councillors? Councillor Bachman? Okay, Councillor Connor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Graves, please.
I could just make one more sort of general comment on behalf of staff. So is there a general sense that this is heading in the right direction for council? And like, if we can come together with these lists, I guess what I'm just trying to get is that, you know, we'll be at the middle of the month. We don't want to have anything sort of nuclear come out of the weeds that's going to take us in a different direction. If council is kind of getting a sense of what this budget means and where this is heading with the new information that you'll receive, or kind of getting some positive momentum here so that we can get our heads around this for the 13th. Is that a fair statement?
I believe so, Council. I think it's great. It's been a lot of learning today, and I very much appreciate everyone's time. Councillor Graham.
I just have one question that I'd like to ask Mr. Perrin. If we're looking at the Front Street project and we find that we're able to do it over the course of the winter, can you remind me how many months that project was supposed to be taking?
Mr. Perrin, please.
I'll defer to Mr. Brooks on that.
Sir.
I believe that was 110 working days for that project. I would caution council against, you know, there are some considerations to doing this project in the winter. You can talk to some residents who live through winter projects on other streets. It snows, it rains, it doesn't dry out. There's only one way in and out of Front Street. And once you begin getting snow, that snow needs to be removed. Residents need to access their properties throughout the winter. So while I know that council may consider doing it in the winter, there are some considerations that need to be taken before we go ahead and move to do that in the winter. So my recommendation to council would be that if we do proceed with Front Street in the 2023 budget, that staff would come back with a report outlining how we could best tackle the project, whether it be a phased approach where we do a portion in the fall and then pick up in the spring of 2024 and finish it, or if it is indeed to go through the winter. So.
Thanks very much, Mr. Brooks. Excuse me, Councillor Graham.
And understandable for sure. And I think that I should definitely be checking in with the residents, and I plan on doing that up there on Front Street. But my question was more about the consideration for budget relief. So if we have it over the course of 2 years, Archana, would that be that the funding of it would be over the course of the 2 years as well, fall into the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget?
That is correct.
Thank you. Oh,
So
sorry.
that would be giving us a cost savings in the 2023 budget, correct?
So I don't think it will give you cost savings. I can't say how many days it would work and how much amount. And also the quote or the bids that you got for summertime may not be same for winter time. So I'm not sure if there would be any savings or not.
Councillor Graham, please.
So it would seem to me that, and obviously we can't say, you know, you can't write that in stone or that you can't verify that completely, but it would seem to me that if we're doing the project over the course of 2 years, rather than when we were going to do it over the course of just 2023, and we were paying that 2.1 million in 2023. Now, if we're going to be doing the project in 2023 and 2024, those costs would somehow be split between the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget, which would alleviate some of the costs for this 2023 budget and reduce the amount of the increase in our budget this year.
That is correct statement.
Thank you. Mr. Perrin, did you want to comment?
Yeah, sorry, I need to comment. While it may reduce the cost for 2023 budget, in all likelihood, it will increase the overall cost of the project. Because back to Councillor Connor's comment that he made at a previous council, meeting is that that would require 2 mobilizations on behalf of the contractor. If you want to take in and defer the project over multiple years, one thing the council may wish to consider is to budget for a portion of the project in 2023, reserve that money, and go to tender in late 2023, November, December, get out early and tender the project with it to be completed in its entirety in 2024. That's similar to what was done in 2021, where the council, previous council said this is too large of a project to undertake funding in 2021. We're going to put a portion of the project in reserves with anticipation that it would be completed in 2022. So from a cost containment and return on investment, you may be better off to consider that you partially fund it, the remainder of the project in 2023 as part of this budget process, fund the remainder in the 2024 budget, but do it as one project in 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin.
And through you, Mr.
Councillor Graham, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Perrin, that was one of the other options that I was looking at and discussing, but I wasn't talking about doing it in 2 phases where we would start and stop. I was talking about what the construction fellows had recommended that or had notified us that it would be a cost savings to do it over the course of the winter because they're not busy. So it would be all 3 months together. They said from a construction standpoint that they would be capable of doing that. It was only from an environmental standpoint that we would have to make sure that that was okay. The other option, though, by all means, I agree with you completely, Mr. Perrin, that if we want the cost savings and we defer the project to 2024, we could put away of the 2.1 million that we're looking at, we could put away, say 1.5 million of it this year, save $600,000 on this year's budget and use 600,000 from the 2024 budget with the 200,000 or the 2 million that are in reserves from 2022, and then use 1.5 million for out of the 2023 budget, saving 600,000 for this 2023 budget and using 600,000 out of the 2024 budget. I agree completely. That's a good idea.
Mr. Perrin.
While that may be considered a good idea, we would go back and rebut to that, is that if you refer back to the asset management plans and back to Mr. Graves' comment about infrastructure deficit and being able to fund, if you reduce your capital program by 600,000 this year, and what are you going to do next year? Because you're continually going behind on your asset management, being able to fund a program. So again, we just caution council on that with respect to long-term financial viability of your asset replacement.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Councillor Graham.
From my understanding, though, it was just the matter of deferring it by 1 year or 6 months or whatever it is that the program would be. But those are what I see as the 2 options of those, is that we do it over the course of the winter as recommended by the Construction Association to save money. And then as well put a certain portion of that in this budget and the next budget, again, save money on this budget, or the second option of doing it in 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Bachman, please.
All due respect, the Construction Association is not the one bidding. They're speaking on behalf of bidders. And 2, we're under the assumption that that's going to be the same price. There's no guarantee that the price they gave us this year will be the same price it was next year. So saying we're saving 600,000 this year may end up costing us 2.5, 2.5, 3. We don't know. We're dealing with unknowns until we get an actual quote.
Councillor Graham, please.
And again, it could go either way. I don't think that I want to be making a decision based on fear that it could go up, because it could also go down from what they've told us, especially if it is. I mean, we're talking about what the experts are telling us as the construction experts. One of them actually was one of the bidders. So that your first statement probably wasn't true, because they actually did say that they were the bidder and that they would recommend over the course of the winter that it be done because it would reduce costs.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. A healthy debate by all, as we always enjoy here at Central Elgin. I'm thinking now, as we've picked a date, if there isn't any other business right now, and it's coming to be 2 o'clock, and I know some have some other appointments, could I go to the bylaws now with your permission? We have a couple of bylaws. Is there anyone, or would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Connors, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what have we decided here? I mean, we've talked about a number of different scenarios here. And Jeff, you talked about going back and doing a reappraisal of when the best time to start, whether we split it, whether we mobilize twice or not. So could we
Just to
discuss
interject here
this?
for a moment. Are we talking about, are you switching to
Front Street, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to handle the budget now. If that's okay with everyone, but.
But that is the budget.
Okay, I didn't specifically, Councillor Graham, did you have a comment?
I think that through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Connors, I think that those are the things that, along with this list of things that we need to consider, so that when we do come back in a week, that we look at both of those options. Right. And then from there, we would decide, is this a viable option? Perhaps it's, I think we need to decide when we are retendering because it hasn't gone out to retender. If we're going to take the recommendation of the Construction Association on what the cost saving measures are, I think each of us has to decide that. We come back and vote on that as well. Along with all of these costs as well. And the list, the secondary list that Archana is providing us.
So this is what I was referring to earlier with, and I referred to it wrongly with a wish list. So there's a possibility that we could defer this, which would pick up money in this year's budget and would have to pay it out in next year's budget as well. So is there other items that we should be considering at this time before we get into the next meeting?
Thank you. Did Mr. Graves, did you have a comment or was that just a?
Well, I was just gonna, it's more of a summary comment, but sort of to Councillor Connors, as I understand it, where we're sitting here right this minute is our Director of Finance is going to combine her March or her February information with the new list that she has provided. And when we meet next week, then you will have a new revised number, which sounds like it's going to be in the 1.9-ish area, something like that. I guess at that point in time, if council wants to have a discussion about, okay, you want to consider the splitting of the Front Street project, that's a thing that could be, tweaked next week to land at your final number as an option. I guess my last comment is it's just whatever you defer to next year, you can have less to spend next year on your total capital program. And we've talked all about that, and I don't want to sound like a broker, but that's where I think we are. I think we've made, in my mind, made some great progress. We have a list. You're going to have the list, the revised information, so that you'll have some crisp information to work with next week.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. On the whole, I do agree with the idea of giving Archana a list to work with and coming back to it next week. But just to make sure that our numbers are as reasonable and accurate as possible, could we ask that she not include the reducing of maintenance to fire trucks in that? Because I think that speaks exactly to what Mr. Perrin is describing of treating capital and assets like when you're not managing your capital assets, it is somehow different from your basic operations. And I don't want to see us damaging our vehicles or making them obsolete earlier than is necessary because we're not managing them effectively.
Thank you. Perhaps we could discuss that at the next meeting.
My concern is just that if we give her direction to add things, that if there's a majority that doesn't want it and then we add it, then all it does is make the numbers not accurate next time and we go through this whole same thing again.
I appreciate that. I think the will of council was that the list that was provided be sent back without exception, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, thank you, Councillor Halpin. Would you mind if I could get, sorry, pardon me, go ahead, please.
Has council selected a time for the April 13th
7
meeting?
p.m. as the regular time, please, Ms. Leach. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, please.
Go ahead, please.
Can I use email to send it to everybody, or people would like the hard copy of this list? Because if it's a hard copy, then Delaney would have to get it printed and send it over to you. But if it's an email, I can send it to you probably end of day today or next morning.
Getting the thumbs up for email. Thank you, Archana.
Thank you.
If I could get a mover and a seconder for the bylaw for this meeting, please. Councillor Graham, Councillor Bachman.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Graham, seconded by Counselor Bogman, that bylaw 2780 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If I could get a mover and a seconder for the second reading, Counselor Connors, Counselor Halpin.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Connor, seconded by Counselor Halpin, that bylaw 2780 be read a third time and finally passed.
Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If I could get a mover and a seconder for adjournment, Deputy Mayor Noble, Counselor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Counselor Watson, that the special meeting of council dated Wednesday, April 11th, 2023, be adjourned at 2:00 p.m. and the next meeting of council be scheduled for Monday, April 11th, 2023 at 6:20 p.m.
All those in favor? Thank you to all, to staff, to council. Excellent opportunity for us to get some